This is a sound check. 1, 2, 3. Sound check. If you hear anything, press 1. 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, everybody. It's Ash. And I got my partner, Bats. Say hey, Bats.
That's
You're watching the Ash and Bats show. And
what's up with that.
what's up with what?
I said, what's up? What's up?
First of all, this is the first show. We're started a little bit late, a few minutes late. Okay, we're not as punctual as we want to be. We're still working on that, but this is the first show, episode 9. It took us 8 full episodes, Bats, before we didn't have a technical snafu.
We're evolving.
I think this is a time for celebration, and I think I need to have a drink to that. I am drinking some frozen bullet whiskey. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a guac organic brand yerba mate Revel Berry.
Oh God, my head just hurts hearing that. All right.
But I did have a shot of some 20-year-old whiskey.
You shot 20-year-old whiskey?
Yep,
What are you,
it
some
was
sort
delicious.
of heathen?
And it was imported from Ireland.
Imported 20-year-old whiskey from Ireland, and you just shot it down.
Yep, no shame.
Oh my goodness.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way.
Oh, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Hope everyone's wearing green. I'm not.
I have green underwear and a Ninja Turtle shirt on, so that kind of counts.
We're not talking about the fungus, though, in your underwear. That doesn't count.
Well, it is green, and it stained the chones, so.
Whew. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the show. We're trying to do our best to improve every time, and we always appreciate you guys that have been loyal. I don't want to say followers. I hate that word, followers. Loyal listeners, dedicated to the show.
Friends.
You've really helped us. You've held us to the fire. You've helped us with information and feedback and things to get better. And most of all, you've kind of kept our spirits up to like have an audience to talk to, because it's always important to when you do a show that this, when you look into the seats, if you will, that's not an empty auditorium. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of. I was just thinking as you were saying it. It's like we've had at least 3 people since the first show, almost 2 months ago, and that was Tehillium, Melissa Harris, and Quirks, right?
No, Dave Asanowicz, I could never pronounce. He was like one of our originals. He's not quite as regular because he's East Coast, and so he often has to go to bed. But he was one of our first show guys. Eric Breen, did you mention him?
I did not. Eric Breen, no.
How could you not mention Eric Breen?
I know. I love Eric Breen.
So yeah, this is the Ash and Bash Show, episode 9. We're about to hit double digits. I can't believe it. Feels like just yesterday we started doing this. This particular week's episode for the Comixology Club was the Umbrella Academy. We'll be getting to that a little bit later. I'm particularly proud. I don't know why. I feel like a little kid who like draws a freaking stick figure drawing, and it's like, hey, Mom, put this on the fridge. But I feel like really proud with these little thumbnails I've been doing with the show. I've been trying to capture, just kind of a cool element. And I mean, most of the credit has to go to the art of the, books and, the illustrators that I'm plagiarizing here for our banner. But I kind of liked particularly how this one turned out with the red stripe. If you've seen the full cover of the book, it has a red stripe in the middle for the title, and I tried to emulate that a little bit. But
no, yeah. So far, I've noticed like all the thumbnails have had a nice what's the word, vibe. I hate the word vibe. I never liked the word vibe.
Feel.
I don't know. They fit the tone of, I don't know. I don't know. That's the vibe. They have.
What's been going on with you this week in the world of comics and geekdom?
Oh, goodness gracious. My hero turned on us all.
Your heroes. Tell us about this.
So, you and I have back and forth had this Frank Miller, Neil Adams debate. A and I remember I think I sent you a screenshot before the whole him discovering Comicsgate, where he was, like, anti-Trump kinda stuff, and you're like I forget what you said, but like, not the most hurt or something, but then I, uh I jumped on Twitter, like, early one morning, like, was it Tuesday morning? Yeah, it was Tuesday morning, and I saw Neil Adams had said he'd been hearing about Republicans losing their jobs in comics. And he says, we can't stand for this and people being blacklisted. And this is, it's about this an art community, not a political party. And all like everyone retweeted it and had something to say. And I was like, I gotta get a video out. And I, said my piece on that. And then a day later, he 18 and a half hours later, he had went through 100 phone calls or so he says, and he had found no Republican talent in the industry, and it was all fake. Someone had been feeding him lies that Republicans were being blacklisted from the industry.
I see. So how did he turn on you though? Like you said that.
I feel he didn't turn on me
Oh,
per se, but I just like it kind of hurt a little. Like I felt genuinely sad.
yeah.
Not so much. It's like what made me sad is like seven like old men are very like when it comes to politics, they're like in the grand scheme of things, it's like everything will be fine, like and it just I don't know, it felt very odd, like Neil Adams is like to me he's one of the greatest artists to ever work at DC and just comics in general. And like a 70-year-old man complaining about the president on Twitter is just weird enough. I'm just like, whatever. But then, like, to say that there was no talent in the industry, and it's like, and I replied to him, and I didn't get any response. But I said, what about Chuck Dixon? And I tagged them all in it. Chuck, Ethan, Mike S. Miller, Brett Wise. How do you say that dude? Mitch Brettweiser. I just tagged pretty much like the whole Ethan crew. And yeah, it's just like I felt genuinely sad. That's pretty much what the news of comics for me it is.
All right. Well, I think I'm on the beginnings of opening a big can of worms today on Twitter. I posted a tweet, and I'll just some of you guys have seen, but I'll just read it in case you missed it. I said the hashtag Indicron pros, as they should be called, continue to steer hashtag Comicsgate away from its purpose. They're becoming more and more anti-industry while simultaneously promoting its own exclusive community. I like these guys, and they're free to do what they wish, but CG suffers. And I posted this in response to a tweet from Edwin Boyette, who I greatly respect, have no ill will towards at all. I think he's a great guy in general. But just because I think people are cool people doesn't mean I always agree with everything they have to say or, or what they believe in. He had posted an image. I don't know whose image it is. But his tweet just says planning and priorities for Indicron.com. And he's got this notebook. He took a picture of different notes. And the very last thing on the note says, listening to the community, respect and dignity first and foremost and last. So hopefully I count as part of the community and I will be listened to and be treated with respect for my dissenting opinion. But some of the things on this note, which, I can, of course, quickly here share. Oop, close that. Transition.
Yeah, like,
Um,
yeah, that definitely does sound like a can of worms.
it has the potential, I think, to be a big can of worms. So I'm going to show everyone the image in case you didn't see it. This was Edwin's tweet. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was in the middle where it says working, A, special recognition of Comicsgate, B, accessibility. And I've heard the talks before on this crowd because I dally over on that other side occasionally. And there's this idea that there's sort of this inside community, and the Comicsgate pros, as they're often called, and I hate saying that because I don't feel like that's what Comicsgate is, and I feel like it's convoluting the message. And so that's why I said the Indiecron pros, because they've all kind of put themselves under this Indiecron banner. They are exclusive. They only allow Comicsgate pros. So, for instance, hypothetically, if like say Gail Simone was to like have a big blow up in the industry or something and say, "Oh, I want to join and make comics over here on Indiegogo, and I apologize for all what I've done, and I just want to, blah blah blah," she would not be allowed. She would be excluded, and that rings wrong to me because isn't that kind of the problem that we started with originally? Is that there's all this gatekeeping in the industry, and that people like her are a big problem. She keeps, her and her allies keep people like John Malin out, Brett Booth out, John DeLay. There's some big guys like Ethan Van Sciver's probably big enough that he would get work. Chuck Dixon is probably big enough that if he tried hard enough, he would get work. But unless you're a superstar, it's too easy to be written off, and that's what's happened for most of these pros. So I don't fault them at all for going off and starting this whole like indie banner thing and uniting together. But they've done it under the Comicsgate flag, and when you do that and you start promoting your work like that and you call yourself Comicsgate, and you start getting people who are like joining the community like within the last couple of months, they don't understand the history of what's gone on, and they start associating Comicsgate as a separate political spectrum. And like, it divides the community. And Comicsgate, I try to do this tweet every week just to remind people what it's about. It's about fixing the industry. It's about getting the existing publishers to not take the existing characters that we know and love, Spider-Man, Captain America, Superman, Batman, what have you, and using them as tools for spreading social engineering and their agendas. Keep them true to the characters that they are and respect the customers that have been, essentially keeping those characters alive and funding your company for the past 80 years. The reason why Marvel and DC exist is because fans have coughed over money in return for good Superman stories, good Spider-Man stories, whatever. And then all of a sudden you take that advantage of it and exploit it and say, okay, now these characters are all popular. Thank you guys for paying and subsidizing that for us. Now we're going to use this to promote our political agenda. No, you don't have the right to do that. I'm sorry, you don't. If you want to go off and make your own comic and call it Man-Eaters and talk about how women getting their menstrual cycle turn into monsters, I don't know, whatever, you can go do it. I applaud you. I'm not telling anyone that their comics have to fit a particular paradigm or have a particular message, but when you're playing in someone else's playground, you got to abide by those playground rules. And one of the things that we've hated was this whole gatekeeping thing, and it's like, we don't think that's right. We don't think that it's like, oh, just because you voted for Trump, you don't get a job at Marvel now. That's bullshit. And when I see things like this, I feel like it's the pendulum swinging the other way. And just because I may agree with these guys more often politically, and I feel like they're all a bunch of good guys, I still feel like there's room for this to get out of control. I still feel that good intentions can still turn out bad. And I think it's important for people like myself and anyone else that has this feeling. I'm not telling anyone else what to think, but to speak their mind, to give their opinions. I'm not condemning anyone. I'm not calling anyone a bad person or whatever. I just don't like where this is going. So anyone that's on this side of the Indicron side, and this happens to be listening to me blabber right now, that's important to understand. This is just an opinion. I am a very live and let live sort of person, but I also believe that just because I'm letting you live and do what you want doesn't mean that I can't criticize it and speak my feelings if I disagree. So, long story short, this I just tweeted out today, and Dave in our chat, he responded to it, which you probably see on the screen. He kind of quoted John Malin. So John's one of the most fiery guys in Comicsgate Pros. So if anyone has the potential to spark off the flames, John does, because he's a take no bullshit kind of guy, and I have a lot of respect for him. But I worry that the wrong people, and I'm not saying John's the wrong person, I worry that the wrong type of people will get a hold of this. Outrage culture will then ensue, and blah, 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 things will blow up, and that's not my intent at all. So I am now on record with my voice. It's on this tweet or on this cast, and if anyone takes this out of context or spins this wrong, you guys are all witnesses to my actual opinions and what I actually said here. So, what do you think about that?
I think that the industry is dying, and it's cancered, and their Comicsgate, whatever, is essentially the chemotherapy of it. But if you know anything about chemotherapy, it's not a guaranteed chance it's going to fix anything.
No.
But it is an opportunity for that.
And chemotherapy can kill the patient.
Yes. And I think that that Marvel is dead. It's a corpse that's being hung up on strings and being like, look, it's still alive. It's not. It's dead.
Yeah, that's
DC is on its deathbed right now.
Oh, and I think that's a little too.
I don't. I don't.
Marvel's on their deathbed. I think that's
more. No, Marvel is dead. Marvel is dead.
Oh, they're not dead.
As a publishing house, they're dead.
They're still the number one publishing house. I don't think you can call them dead yet.
They sell. Yeah, they're the number one publishing house because all they do is publish number ones.
Oh man, the house of number ones.
But yeah, I just kind of I'm of two minds about this, really, where it's like I want Marvel to come, have a Lazarus moment where they just like come back from the dead. I want that.
Oh sure, yeah.
Right? Like I was just like, how great it would be if like 2 years from now you're just like it's like something sparked, and everyone was super hesitant. They're like, no, seriously. The comic shops were like, no, seriously, here. I just want to give these away because I want my Marvel fans back. And that's what they need. They need what DC did from New 52 to Rebirth to spark that life back into it, but not do what DC did and decide that, oh, you know what, 2 years is too long of a happy time, so let's have downer time. With it's just DC is pretty much, to me, it's like on its deathbed. With King, G. Willow Wilson, and Bendis on the flagship titles, it's it's rough. It's really rough.
Well,
There's no
it's rough for diehard fans like you, but I think it's important to remember that just because comics are being made that you hate, and I'm not saying I like them or anything, but that's not the same as making comics that aren't selling. And the problem here is, as bad as Bendis is, and as much as I love to point out his failings writing Superman, and as much as I think Tomasi and Jurgens were doing the best Superman probably in my lifetime collecting comics, that's my opinion. But the facts remain: Bendis is selling more Superman, so it sucks. That's the cold hard facts reality that Bendis is actually, when it comes to market share and moving units, is good for Bendis. Now,
he's
I'm not.
not selling more than before he was on the book though.
Yes, he is. I've checked the
No, no.
numbers. He's selling about 10,000 more units. Jurgens was down to about low 40s on Action Comics, and Bendis is currently at low 50s on Action Comics.
Well,
So it sucks. Like I said, I was really hoping the numbers would be the other way. I was really hoping it would be like, oh look, Bendis is selling half as much as Jurg, and have this big argument. And you could rally to DC, but this is why I keep pushing this whole thing. That's like, look, you get people. And I'm not speaking to anyone specifically. I'm just in general. Stop buying these shitty comics. For the
it's
love
funny you
of
say
God.
that. It's funny you say that. As much as I think DC and Marvel are dead, I think it's also I am dying inside when it comes to these books. Like
Uh,
I'm starting to feel like every week I'm reading the worst comic I've ever read.
well, you do purposely buy these really shitty books,
Yeah, for the sake of like the channel.
which I get. But what I'm saying is, as an example, is even if you're doing it for your channel, the side effect is you're reading the book and it's making you feel bad. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. And it's like but it's also a train wreck that I can't look away from, you know.
yeah,
And
it's
it's like I feel like I haven't been able to ever stop reading Batman comics. So like do I finally pull the trigger and stop, or do I just suffer? Like, it's like it's this weird.
well. The good news is you have Detective Comics.
But yeah, like
You're not totally in a dead wasteland of just like, oh god, both Batman comics just suck ass, and I have no Batman, and it's going on for years. I mean, I know how you feel. The whole reason I got out of comics is, as Batman is to you, X-Men was to me. And when Chris Claremont left X-Men, it was still okay for a while because I thought Jim Lee had really learned a lot from Chris, and he was kind of steering the ship on the new X-Men title. I was like, I'm really liking what Jim's doing. I think he's got some good ideas. His buddy Will Spartacio, and then he had this third guy, I forget his name. He never got any recognition, but he was kind of like part of the crew or whatever. And they were writing books, and I was like, oh, they're doing some good stuff. It's great. It's fine. And then the Image thing happened, which at the time I was kind of excited because I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to get all these creator-owned Jim Lee books and blah, blah. But then X-Men, they had to find hands to put it. And at first they gave it to Scott Lobdell, which he did an okay job with it, but he was no Chris Claremont. And then they gave it to end up someone else, and then the art started slipping, and I was just like, then they started doing really freaking dumb things with the book, and I was like, what are you guys doing? And then the whole like design, like the whole concept of the book changed, where Chris Claremont wrote this sort of like never-ending soap opera comic book. That was he was kind of the first person to really do that. It's what made X-Men different than everything else, was that it was this kind of a soap opera. And they just got rid of that, and they just turned it into this generic mutant Avengers type thing, and then they started getting rid of all your favorite characters and replacing them with all these weirdo and it was just like, what are you doing? This isn't even interesting anymore. And I was getting pissed off, and it was shit. And I was feeling like what you're describing. I was just like, I'm not interested. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was like, I'm spending all this money on books, and you know, so I noped out and found other interests and stuff. And I mean, I didn't hate comics. I just comics have been expensive for a while. I mean, they're more expensive now than ever, but even in the 90s when books were like $2 or $3, I mean, $2 was kind of the norm, but everyone was doing all these deluxe holographic cover, die cut this and multiple covers. And so you were like, your $2 books, you know, you'd like, you know, they'd like, oh, it's $5. And you're like, why is this book $5?
Yeah.
Um,
Like I refuse to buy those Batman Who Laughs books because they're $5.
yeah,
And uh
they are bigger though, bats. I
I,
mean,
I
to be in their
understand that, but
defense,
okay, let me finish. What really upset me when Rebirth happened, they were like, because I didn't know too much about this Tom King guy. I know he worked on Grayson, and I there was parts of Grayson that I really didn't like, and there was parts that I really did like, but there was two writers, so you didn't know who it was. Now I can tell which parts that I didn't like are Tom King, and the parts that I did like are the Tim Seeley parts. And they're like, Scott Snyder's still on Batman. He's on this Batman book with John Romita. It's $5, and I was like, ooh, Scott Snyder and John Romita Jr. That's dope. There you go, Eric. I said dope. So it was $5, and I was like, man, it's $5. But they were like, it's bigger though, and you're like, yeah, but the main story is still 20 pages, and the backup story is, 5 pages. So it's like it's a little bit bigger. And then I didn't really care for I like the backup stories more than I like the main story on some of them. So I was reading just like paying $5 for like 5 pages of stories that I didn't, like it. So, and it's because it was Scott Snyder, it was $5. And I'm just like, it's slightly bigger and it's Scott Snyder. So they're just charging extra. And it's stupid. And they're doing the same thing again with the Batman Who Laughs. And I didn't like the first issue. I don't like Jock's art on Batman. He does not have a dynamic style that fits the Batman's character. Like a character without superpowers is harder to draw because the action is slower and his art just looks slow in itself. So it makes Batman look really boring to me. And the story wasn't very cohesive with Scott Snyder, and I was like, yeah, I'm not coming back for 2, not coming back for 3. And there was like, here's Batman with guns. I'm like, no, it's $5. No, I'm not buying it. And they're just doing it over and over again.
well, I do personally wish they would be. Well, I wish they would be $2. Let's face it, books should be $2. But given the state of things, I do think they should stay at the $3.99. However, I'm not going to cry foul too much. Like I said, the book is 50% larger than a normal sized issue. It's 33 total pages versus the average comic today is 20 pages. It's for $1 more. I don't like having my pull list swell up in price every week. I'd rather just give me more issues. It's funny I say this because I would rather have like 8-issue series at $3.99 than a 6-issue series at $4.99. Like I'd rather have more overall issues strung out over time than paying for big, thick, even if it's like, like when the X-Men 11 or whatever came out recently, it was like $8 book, and they were trying to judge, it's like 60 pages, but it's like, yeah, but it's a fucking $8 book. Don't you realize we have other books that we buy? We come in once a month and buy our X-Men. Well, I'm sorry, once a week, because X-Men was weekly. Bullshit. Like, people don't buy comics that way. They buy mini comics, and I want to enjoy mini comics, which is why I'm so against the whole bi-weekly shit. I'm not sitting here starving going, I gotta wait a month for my book. And this is why I don't complain about Doomsday Clock being late. Because I'm like, dude, my pull list is already overflowing. Like, it's more money than I want to spend. So when a book's late, I'm like, cool. That's respite for me. Like, I can wait a little bit. But when they start hammering these books and it's like, here's more, here's more, here's more, and I go to the store and I'm like, geez, I'm walking away with you had the same problem a couple weeks ago as I did. Like, I couldn't fit all my comics in my box that I bring to the store. I was like, this is too many. I planned
Mhm.
on only getting like 4 or 5 books a week, and now I'm walking away with like 12 books a week or something. It's just because they're just coming all the time and all these mini series. And that's another thing I hate is why is this? What bothered me about this Batman Who Laughs thing is like we started it over. Why isn't this Batman Who Laughs number 4?
Well, it's Batman Who Laughs, Grim Bat or whatever.
Grim Knight,
No,
yeah.
Grim Knight #1, and it's like it's a one shot, and it's like I almost bought it because I saw a really cool cover that was, you remember the Batman Year Two, Todd McFarlane Batman, where his cape's like flowing out, and he's got his arm around a woman.
No,
No,
I don't think so.
it's
I'm,
it's
I'm,
Todd
if you
it's Todd
showed me it,
McFarlane Bat.
if you showed it to me, I'd probably be like, oh yeah, I've seen it. But
Yeah, it's it's a Todd McFarlane Batman, but they just did a homage to it with the Grim Knight, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I'll get it because I like this cover. Like, oh, that's a shop exclusive. I'm like, well, now I'm not buying this book.
these fucking
You know?
these shop exclusives are killing me.
Yeah.
They're killing me.
Like, don't show that crap online because then it's like, oh, that's dope. I want to buy it. Oh, that's a shop exclusive in Florida. Well, then fuck it. I'm not buying it.
They're turning the comic collecting industry into a thing for whales.
Hmm.
And for those of you guys who aren't familiar with the term, I'm sure everyone is, but just in case, a whale is a person with a lot of disposable income who's willing to spend a lot of money on what normal people would consider superfluous or not worth the money. Um, uh, so these are the type of people that will go and seek out this special 1 in 1,000 variant copies that
Yeah.
usually go for about $1,000. I was watching YouTube. In fact, I want to kind of talk about this show that Comics Quirks turned me on to on YouTube. It's a good segue here. If any of you guys haven't heard of, there is a show called Comic Book Palace. And it's, see if I can just bring up something here real quick. It is a weird show. It's no budget. It's basically this hole in the, I don't even know where it's at. I think it's in Pennsylvania. This comic book shop, and they just film in the shop like a reality TV show, and they'll have like customers talking, and the main guy, this Glenn, who you'll see here, is the owner of the shop, and they have some regulars, and they'll note, and they just have a camera, just sort of like being like a fly on the wall inside the shop, and these guys, everyone just people talking about comics, and it's really kind of a cool thing to watch in the background. Like I do it when I'm like sorting comics, or if I'm like setting up, doing stuff for the show, or prepping shows, or editing videos, or whatever I'm doing. It's like a cool thing to just have running in the background. And it started off a little bit too weird for me. I was like, I don't know about this, but Comics Quirks was pushing. He's like, loves it. I got about 4 or 5 episodes in, and then I was like, I kind of really like this. Like, it's just this weird. I don't know how to explain it. It's not really a train
How
wreck, but
how how long is an episode?
between a half hour and an hour,
Oh my gosh.
depending. So I mean, it's like TV. Like I said, it's not so great that you can just sit there and, at least for me, that I can just sit there and stare at it for an hour. Like I said, I put it on as I'm doing something. So like I'll be sorting comics and it'll be on. Because it's not, as you can see here, I'm streaming it on the channel. It's not like visually impressive, right? It's just a camera in people's face, and it's like reality, and it's people talking about comics, and it's kind of what we do here, right? We talk
Yeah.
about comics and give our opinions. So I'm like, I find it interesting to listen to people and how their different views. And the show started a couple years back, so it started right around the time that Steve Rogers became a Nazi, and
Okay.
I'm finding it really interesting to watch these episodes and kind of live through these years that I missed of what comics fans were talking about in shops and how it was going down. And none of these guys are like quote unquote comics gate. There's none of that mentioned. This is just regular old Joe comic fans in small town USA in a little junky shop, and it's kind of representative of it's very real life comic culture without all the bullshit that we see online. And I just find it entertaining and refreshing. There's some funniness to it. You know, they edit it. It's not just straight up footage. They try to find the best footage. But I forget what I was going with this show. Anyways, they said something in this show that I was going to segue from. Remind me what I was talking about before. Bats, you're supposed to save me.
I don't know, man. You go on sometimes, and I don't know what you're talking about.
I do. Dang it.
That's a good issue of Spawn right there. Why are these books so random? I'm watching the YouTube, and you're probably your delay over there.
Yeah,
But like
I'm like
none
clicking
of the,
around, forgetting that I'm streaming my desktop here.
I hate that Joker. It's so ugly.
Well, he's not there to freaking pin up on your wall and
Here's a
He's
no,
just a
but
comic book
Joke.
shop owner.
No, Joker. The image of
Oh.
freaking that Joker is so ugly. Like Joaquin Phoenix Joker is just gross.
Oh, whatever. Like the Joker's never meant to be physically appealing anyway. Like,
No, he's a handsome man.
if you say so.
No, like Joker has always he's always been a very flamboyant, very clean cut, very takes care of his appearance kind of guy. Always. Like even look at your Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns. Like he's a guy who wears a suit. He always cleans up his hair. He puts on makeup. He's very clean. Like this Dark Knight Chris Nolan garbage where he's like this slimy, greasy, snaky kind of person is not Joker, and I don't like it. Like every time I see versions of him,
The greatest portrayal of Joker ever. You don't like
because he's slimy. He's slimy and gross. And he's like always licking his lips, and he's like, he looks like a drug addict. Oh, that's because Heath Ledger was never mind. I don't like it. Sorry, I just don't. I think it's just trashy and gross.
I love it. I love it. And I've seen plenty of comic iteration of Joker being slimy, so I'm not sure why you have this
he's always clean. Universally, Joker is super clean. He's not greasy hair.
He's not universally super clean though. That's the point. So I don't know. I definitely do not have this vision of him. But whatever. That's the nature of comics, and over many years, characters go through much change, and people have different visions, and different writers and creators and artists, and people have different they portray him very differently. And heck, we're about to see Jeff Johns give us 3 different Jokers. How do you feel about that?
And all 3 of them are very clean cut. But yeah, I look forward to it.
Well, hopefully
Gary Frank's not drawing it, right? Please tell me Gary Frank's not drawing it. Who's drawing that?
I don't know. I just hope that your boy doesn't let you down.
I mean, he's not my boy. He's actually a rude gentleman.
Jeff Johns isn't your boy?
No, he's pretty rude in person, at least in my interactions with him.
Oh, I've never interacted with him, so
yeah.
All I know is that
he's a great writer, but I think all great writers are kind of.
I think Jeff Johns is the salvation of DC, and they need to put him back in the freaking captain's chair.
Well, no, let's just give it all to Tom King.
Gosh, it's driving me nuts, Bats, because I had this segue. I had this connection I was trying to say, and it was on the show. Something had happened that was, and now I can't think of it. You know, when you have something on the tip of your tongue and it just starts driving you mad.
Yeah, I was trying to do that today at work. I was trying to remember someone's name for like 7 hours.
Oh, I hate getting old, man. My memory is going for shit. I just can't remember anything short term anymore. Oh man. Normally when I'm just doing a video and this happens, I just pause it. And I can take several minutes and like think about it and then unpause and go, and it's like didn't miss a beat. Which by the way, quick pro tip there. Um, our boy Zach, if you're listening, because he's Zach is so funny, man. I listen to his videos and I'm like, this guy is the kind of guy I wish I could be, but he still does things like he doesn't know how to focus his camera on his phone, doesn't know how to like mute things. Like I'm like, there's a mute, like you can just literally, you know, instead of screaming at your boy at your house or whatever, you could just like pause it and like scream at him and then unpause and keep going. It's just so funny.
It's a part, no, but I like that stuff because it's more real.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, no, it is, and you'll notice
it,
like sometimes I'm on my channel, I'm like yelling at the dog too, and I'm not muting, but it's just I feel like Zach doesn't even know that it exists. Like he's so just straightforward, normie, like video guy. Like I just points his camera, and like I've seen him. He doesn't do it as much anymore, but he used to when he did like his lap videos, and
mhm.
he'd be like moving the phone around and back and forth trying to get it to focus. And I'm like, Zach, you just tap the screen.
Did you
Just
what
like just tap it.
when he first started? Because I came in around like the 5,000 subs, but I remember like watching his videos and he'd be like talking comics, and you hear in the background, "Welcome to McDonald's. What can I get for you?" And you're like, he's like, yeah, hold on, everyone. Yeah, can I get a double cheeseburger, uh, with a large Coke? Okay, thank you." And he's like, all right, so yeah, and so Heather Ontos, blah 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 blah. You're like, did this dude just order? Is he in the drive-thru? He's like, yeah, I'm in the drive-thru right now. It's like, oh my god, like,
Oh wow. Oh, Comics Quirk says that Shazam series is pretty good right now, pretty damn good, and I don't disbelieve it. I think Jeff Johns is probably the biggest overall talent that's at
speaking
DC right now.
speaking of good comics, you read any good comics this week?
I did, but I want to get to. Let's put that on the back burner for a second because we're a little bit over here on getting to the feature show part of
Okay,
Umbrella. So remind me about that so we can cover that
okay.
after on the second half of the show. I want to get to Umbrella Academy. I think this is I know it's turned into a TV show, but I can't remember what service.
It's on
It,
Netflix.
it's on Netflix. Okay, I'm gonna have to go check it out. And that's the reason I picked out this show. As most of you guys know, the reason for doing the Comixology we gotta figure out a good name to call this thing. The Comixology Comic Club thing that we do.
It's called Comicsology Comic Club.
Cuck.
COCC. Comicsology Comic Club.
We're not calling it cock bats. So we do this thing every week, and we really kind of want to get you guys involved. Partly because the idea of the show is to discover things. One of the things that used to be great for me in comics, and I think many of you will agree, maybe not, I don't know, but I used to love going to the comic book store and just seeing what was out. Like I almost all of my discovery was going to a store and looking at shelves and looking through back issue bins. We didn't have the internet back in those days. So I had to rely on the stores and talking to comics fans and Wizard Magazine. Wizard Magazine used to
Poor
be
you.
oh, dude, I love Wizard Magazine,
No,
man.
yeah.
But today with the internet and everything, it's almost like there's just no discovery anymore, and it's just I go to the store, I already know what I'm gonna get, and it's almost just becoming kind of like a routine. I have a checklist. I show up. Here's my books. Here's some money. And I miss the whole, wow, what's this book? I've never heard of it. Go talk to someone. What do you know about this? Oh yeah, I read. That doesn't exist anymore, or at least it exists in very small doses. So part of the show for me, at least my motivations, are to have a little bit of that back. When we started this, some of you guys were recommending like, oh, books to do, and people would say things like Watchmen or Dark Knight Returns, and all these great classic books. And I kind of balked at that, and I think Bats and I discussed, and we both came to an agreement that that isn't what we really wanted to do. We didn't want you guys to discover books that have been already put into the Library of Congress as all-time great comics. Like, you guys, if you guys don't know Watchmen is a book you should read, I don't think you're going to get it from me. Like, I don't think Bats and I are going to convince you, like, at this point. And also, we want to discover books. And by doing this, it helps us, because I know it can be tough when you have your own comic book pull list and you're already, if like me, like I'm behind on my own comic books. There's books I want to check out, but I just can't devote the time because I'm already backlogged on other stuff. Plus you have real life and blah, 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 blah. So this almost creates like an assignment or homework assignment. I don't want to make it feel like that, because it shouldn't. But the idea is force you, make a commitment to read something that you normally wouldn't pick out yourself. Well, we try to keep it in a small dose, no more than 200 pages, so it's not overwhelming anyone. It's not too painful in case it's bad. And you can read it and talk about it and enjoy one of the great things about comics, which is just that shared experience. So, long-winded, sorry. To the point, we've been pretty successful so far, I think. I've been very happy. Each week we alternate. I suggest a book, Bat suggests a book, go back and forth. Every book that Bats has picked has been a winner. So I hope every book I pick is also a winner, but, gonna have those lumps. Sometimes I can't expect it because I haven't read any of these, so they're just more educated hunches than anything. But since this one had a TV show and people talked about it and it's been around for over 10 years, I figured there's something to this. This isn't a flash in the pan. So let's check it out. And that's where we're going to get going. Do you have any thoughts, anything you want to say before we start on this, Bats?
No, I think you covered it all.
All right, we'll get right into it. Let me transition our screen over here. And guys in the chat, go ahead and, first of all, type 1 if you read this book, so that we know who to interact with. And also, type in your comments as we're talking. And Bats, I'm going to kind of leave it to you as I'm going through the book.
Okay.
If someone has something that you feel should be like interjected, just interrupt me with that. And because I won't be reading the comics as I'm flipping through this. And we'll start it off. And I'm going to kind of go through my feelings, and then Bats, if you're okay with this, sum up your feelings at the end. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so here we are. The Umbrella Academy, Apocalypse Suite by Gerard Way and Gabriel Ba. Now, Gerard Way, unbeknownst to me, is the lead singer of My Chemical Romance. Did not know that when I picked out the book, but I was educated. I thought that was kind of just an interesting point of trivia. At the beginning of the book, Grant Morrison, I'm not going to read this, but he writes a foreword and explains, that interesting fact and like why it's interesting and why it matters and blah, why he thought, whatever. He writes that. You can read it on your own. But if it was interesting. Now, one thing, by the way, each of these covers here that I'm going to show, these are actually drawn by Gerard. So he is an illustrator as well, which I did not know until the end of the book.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So the covers that I enjoyed, the more artistic covers, I guess what you call them, the like the painted vibe to them.
The one that's like I have on the channel right now, you can see with the Eiffel Tower. This is the writer. He is an illustrator himself, but the book was not illustrated by him. As you can see, the illustrator has much more of a Mike Mignola style to his art, which I've never been a huge Mike Mignola fan, but for some reason, for me, this style worked out really well for the book. And the first page of this book, I thought, really hooked me. I liked the style of the writing. It starts off. It says, "It was the same. It was the same year. Tusslin Tom Gurney knocked out the space squid from Rigel X9. It happened at 9:38 p.m. It came from an atomic flying elbow." And you're just like, what? Like, you're just, what? It already sets the tone that you're in for some weirdo nonsense. So it says, "In that moment, without warning, and in an occurrence of complete coincidence, 43 extraordinary children were born to mostly single women who had shown no signs of pregnancy in seemingly random locations around the world. The children were either abandoned or put up for adoption. The ones who survived, the ones who survived, I read that just tone wrong. Enter Sir Reginald Hargreaves, aka the Monocle, world-renowned scientist and wealthy entrepreneur, inventor of the televator, the levitator, the mobile umbrella communicator, and clever crisp cereal. Olympic gold medalist and recipient of the Nobel Prize for his work in the cerebral advancement of chimpanzees. Space alien." This grabbed me. Like, these first 3 pages, I was like, okay, I'm in for some weird... Because I didn't know anything about this book at all when I came in. And I'm just like, oh, okay, so it's got to have these super being characters. And it's going to be set in this weird sort of... You know, this book feels to me like a cross of X-Men with Hellboy with Watchmen is the best way I could describe the feeling of this book. Now, I'm not going to necessarily point out that you should draw conclusions to its quality based on that. You know, especially when you say words like Watchmen, people are going to be like, "Oh, shut up, Ash. This is no Watchmen." I'm not saying
Definitely
that.
not.
I'm not saying that. But as I was reading it, it definitely made me feel the same way. It made me, as far as the tone and just the style of telling the story, but it also had this bizarro weirdness that Mike Mignola does with his Hellboy world, with these characters. So the structure of this book, or the main concept of this book, is that these 7 kids are adopted by this guy, the Monocle, and in the first book, they disappear for like 10 years. Like, Mr. Monocle adopts them, and they're like, "Well, why?" The press is like, "Why did you adopt them?" And he's like, "To save the world, of course." And then it's like they say, and they say at that point wasn't heard from again for 10 years, and so everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" And then the first book, there's a story where the Eiffel Tower comes to life. Well, not to life. It activates. It turns into a spaceship. You find out, and the kids it's like attacking people, whatever. The kids have to come and save it, and you get the first taste, and they're like 10 years old. And one girl is kind of left behind, and I probably shouldn't have just blasted through that. I could have showed you, but never mind. She gets left behind, and she's like, "Dad, can I go play with them?" And he's like, "No, you're not special at all." Like, so she's like, oh, she has no powers. And you come to find out through this book that their life, being raised by this guy who's not even human, has left them very dysfunctional. And I think that is going to make or break the comic book for most people. Here, where I am flipping through in the book, we have the character that I only know as the boy. They're all numbered in the beginning. There's like number 1, number 2, number 3, and then some of them get names. So like number 1 is called Space Boy,
Or Luther.
Or Luther. They have, yeah, they're eventually given like human regular names, and then they also have like their code names, and then they have their number. So this kid I only know as the boy,
Number 5.
number 5, and his power is he can travel through time. So he runs
I could
away when he's like 10 years old. And
his story in the second volume is much better than the first.
um his he runs away in the first story when they fight the Eiffel Tower, and Mr. Monocle's just like, oh well, whatever, he ran away. Like, doesn't even care. And you see him in this next issue, and he's in the future, and it's like the world is destroyed, and he's just like, oh. And then he starts to have fun. He's like, oh, it took me a few days to figure out I was the only boy alive. Hello. But once I did, unhand thine maiden foul beast, I was ecstatic. I was free. There was no one to tell you what to do. Blah, typical things that a little 10-year-old boy would do. And I really respected that too. I respected that these characters could be portrayed as kids, how kids think like that. The problem here is, and I thought issue 2 was fantastic. They talk about time travel, and he was warned by Mr. Monocle that you can't travel back in time. And he was going to prove him wrong. And you can see here he's an old man, and he's trying to calculate. He says, Dad said it was impossible to travel back in time. Said it couldn't be done. I spent the next 50 years trying to prove him wrong. As usual, it seemed he wasn't. I gave up, accepting my fate as a ghost among the ruins. And in that moment, just as all hope seemed lost, you're an idiot. What? You forgot to subtract 2 from the 1. Like 12 years ago. I wasn't going to say anything, but the answer came to me, literally from a mannequin. He's going crazy because he's just old, and, the mannequin he calls Dolores. And I love the way the writing was done here. I don't know if it's because Gerard Way is a lead singer of a band. He's just got a way with words, writing music or whatever. I don't know. But to me, a lot of the narration and just the dialogue and stuff came off almost with a poetic sense to it. And so the kid eventually, as you see, has found his way home, but he's not aged. He still is like 10-year-old self. And meanwhile, these guys, the rest of the team are adults. And so this whole story is kind of figuring out like why that is. And we go forward, and the girl now, what was her name? Vanya? Yeah, Vanya.
Yeah.
Who didn't have any powers, number 7. So she's being seduced by this evil group of people who want to destroy the world. And they basically say, can I interest you in destroying the world? Well, what? Who are you? And we are the Orchestra Vermonten. And he talks about how his desire to destroy the world. And he's a very old school kind of weirdo villain. Like, to just, we want to destroy the world. Of course, that's what bad guys do. And of course, she flees. And he's like, let her go. She's most likely going back to her family for comfort, in which case we should expect her back very soon. Because her family's dysfunctional, and they don't really, they kind of abandoned her because she didn't have powers. And she, of course, is totally scarred because of this, and gets hooked up with this group of people that give her attention, even though they're so psychotic they want to destroy the world. She has nothing to live for, so she ends up going back. And we get some other stories of other villains, like some, side stuff that's going on, just so we can see some backstory. We have other characters called, like this one, the Rumor, whose power is whatever she says comes true, which is, when you think about it, is a freaking crazy power. She can't, as far as I'm able to determine, she can't control like how it comes true. It just, reality finds a way for whatever she says. She spreads a rumor, and then somehow reality works itself out so that rumor becomes true. So she might say, I heard you're gonna die, or rumor has it you're gonna die. Well, that might, obviously, you're gonna die eventually, so but it's like, rumor has it you're gonna die tomorrow. Oops. So somehow you're gonna die tomorrow. Yeah, so her power is wicked crazy. Anyways, let's see, I'm just gonna flip through here. where you get a lot of backstory of these different characters through these different issues to get to know them more, and then eventually the story kind of comes together in a more traditional format, which is against this orchestra. Um, and here is a crucial moment of the story where Vanya has come, and this character, what was his name, Kraken.
Yeah.
Kraken is kind of like the ninjak of the team. He's or the
I would say Raphael.
well, okay, but Ralph.
He's the guy who gets mad at everything and leaves.
Well, sure, his personality, but I mean, as far as like a superhero team, I was drawing kind of equations to, he's the commando guy, the secret assassin. He's the
Okay.
Rorschach of the team, who's just a general. He doesn't have like raw power, but he's just this general sneaky badass, hard cut, whatever. So he's like, damn it, he has to save her. What the hell are you doing here? You think you're going to show your face after all these years? Meanwhile, those robots are attacking everything, and she's just trying to find some comfort in the only family she's ever known. And he's like, you left. And Spaceman is intervening. He's, the only thing you're going to help us with here is getting killed. And there's nothing that you can tell me that I want to hear. I used to think I had a sister. And she's holding back tears. But I've got nobody. Get lost. And so she runs away. And you're just like, damn, dude. This Kraken guy is a total asshole. Like, the thing is, you find out later in the book, he's in love with her. But I don't know why he acts like he acts like he hates her, but he loves. He's in Superboy or Space Boy's like, Kraken, thanks. That was Vanya, or was that Vanya? Oh, just a citizen, no one special. So the rest of the team doesn't even get to know. So she's left thinking that the only family she's ever even known hates her. So she's got nothing. So she goes back and joins the orchestra, and she goes off the deep end. Here she says, I used to think I have a family, but I have nobody. Let's give them a performance they'll never forget. And so, come to find out, as if you might have suspected, Vanya doesn't. She's not void of any special ability. In fact, you come to find out Vanya is the most powerful of all, which feels a little cliche, but
Dun, 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 dun.
feels a little cliche, but I honestly, until I got to about this point midway through, I did not see it coming. It was done to such effect. I was really thinking that she didn't, so that she could be fucked up and the other characters could be fucked. I thought that was her purpose in the book. I did not see it as, oh, she's actually the one with all the power. So you come to find out she does. She joins this orchestra. They mutate her. And that weird cover that you saw is her. The cover of the book, and then I used as the banner for the show. Here we have a scene. Okay. Yeah. Oop. No, go back. And they name her the White Violin. Your instrument. Come on, don't be shy. Now do what you were born to do. So she plays her violin. And I just love this little scene here of the guy putting his fingers to his lips and his eyes wide, and she smiles. And she plays and splits him in half. And I was like, what the? I did not see that coming. And by the way, this is why you just never join an evil organization. There's just no loyalty. Like, so she just kills the guy that brings her in. And the audience claps. And they're psychotic, I guess. It says, for tonight we end the Umbrella Company, and tomorrow we end the world. And so she has slipped into madness. The story goes on. I'll try to speed things up here. Let's go past these things. If you have not read this book, I'm going to sneak peek my feelings of the book. I thought it was outstanding. Here we see the boy comes back, and he kind of feigns like all this disinterest and he doesn't care about people, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, he's lived 60 years with nobody, all alone, so he doesn't know how to have relationships with people. So that's the whole thing. He doesn't come back actually as a boy. He comes back. His body hasn't aged, but his mind has. So that old man that you saw, that old man is inside this head. You're just seeing a 10-year-old boy, and he just doesn't know anything. And so this monkey or this chimpanzee is the only person that seems to like be wholesome and care about people. Um, he's like, things I've done to get back here, it's too complicated to explain. Why don't you try me? Well, I don't know where to begin. And the boy puts on the monocle that he came to find. But I suppose we should start with the Kennedy assassination. And that's another thing I want to point out with this page. These pages, from a comic book creation standpoint, are so well done. Each page almost tells its own story. This is a perfect example of panel A is beginning, explaining what's happening. Then you've got the middle of this little mini story, and then the end result. The Kennedy assassination leaves you hooked. You're like, well, what? I got to turn the page. And then he looks through the monocle and he sees, what's his name? Pogo. Monkey's name's, or chimpanzee's name's Pogo. And he sees him in the cage and is the test subject. And he was just tortured by Mr. Monocle. And he's like, good, my God, Pogo, I never knew. And it just like shakes him to his core and he passes out. And just the things that you discover in this book where you're reading and going, oh my God, I did not know things about these characters, and the way that the writer, instead of just telling you in a boring fashion, the way he reveals the things about these characters is so expertly executed. So kind of blast through here. Here we see Vanya shows up at the home where the Umbrella Academy is, and she's like, knock knock, and she's gonna play her violin, blow things up, and then the chimp's like, no. Now keep in mind, the chimp, when she was sad and lonely and stuff, the chimp was the one that gave her, I blasted over it, but if you've read the books, the chimp is the one that comes and gives her a hug and says, no, you're the most special one of all, and stuff like that. So this whole scene that's coming up here was like, hit me hard. And he's like, no. And she's like, you were right about me, Pogo. I am special. And she plays her violin, and you're just like, what? I was like, oh my God. This was like ballsy writing, to write someone so just despicable. Like, and the way he set it up, like he's the only one that even had a relationship with her, and she's willing to do that to him. That's enough of a warm up. And then Vanya, and he's looking at her through the monocle. Fascinating. Now remember, the monocle shows you things, and so now you're dealing with the death of the monkey. He can't resolve it. Number 5, what happened? And we're going through. Finally, we're at the last issue of the series, which is going to be the finale. The team has realized they need to stop Vanya. And this type of art style does not really necessarily conducive to a visual comic book battle in the traditional sense. If you're that type of person and love seeing really kick-ass fights and things like that, I understand completely. You're not getting that sort of thing. That being said, I thought the climactic fight in this book was pretty exciting, and how it all shook down. Because it was all set up so well. It wasn't just random people throwing attacks and firing their powers off. We see Kraken, who always goes off on his own because he can't work well with others. And we know from reading the book that he's secretly in love with Vanya, but he's got to stop her, and he's got the skills. He's the commando, and he's gonna sneak up on her. Madame Violin, behind you! They scream, and he sneaks up on her. You need to cut this crap out, Vanya. Brother, what exactly do you think you're doing? Stopping you from doing something stupid. Tell me why I shouldn't slit your throat. And she responds, because I love you. And then immediately he just can't do it because that's his kryptonite. Like, and she knows And she's just so wicked that she used that because I know you won't. And then she starts to slide uh, her thing on the violin, which sends him flying through a wall, and the fight has to go on, which uh, she ends up uh, slashing what's her face's rumors vocal cords, so she can't use her power to give a rumor, which would she's super powerful, so she's taken out. Eventually, the kid who's this super badass. They don't ever explain in this book, but they do show you that he's super powerful. Like he can fly around at death-defying speeds, and he ends up having to take her by surprise. To which there's just so much that actually happens. I'm not going to cover it all, but suffice it to say, he ends up taking her by surprise, and the gun that he found at the house that he was going to use to commit suicide, which is a bigger part of the story, I'm not going to cover. And he just shoots her right in the head. He's got no compulsions, and he's like, "This is the part where, due to a bullet scrambling, your brain, your capillaries start to leak fluid, causing swelling that puts pressure on your motor neurons, and voluntary motor activity fails." What did you just do? What you would have done if you had the brass. I love the writing in this book. And then she looks up and she's still kind of alive somehow, and there's rumbling going on, and she's like, "I'd stop it, but I can't feel my fingers." "Stop what? What are you talking about? What's that sound?" "You ruined the concert." But even a failed performance comes the finale, and they're just like, "What?" And they look, "You know something, Vanya?" They look up, and it's the end of the world. Like, literally a chunk of the moon is coming down, and it just blows up everything. Or does it? And then here we see one of the other characters, the Seance, who is able to like bring back the dead or like visions of them, but it turns out he's a super powerful telepath. And that you learn that here is like fascinating. We're alive, and they talk about, we all knew the Seance was capable of telekinesis, but no one knew he could halt a 40,000 ton chunk of the moon rocketing towards us. I suspect that not even Seance knew this, and they go on this whole like after epilogue, blah 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 blah. And this whole book kind of serves as an introduction to the Umbrella Company and or
Academy.
Academy, sorry, the Umbrella. I don't know why I said company, the Umbrella Academy, and who they are and its bizarro weirdness world. And that's the end. And I tried to go through as fast as I could on that. I did skip quite a lot of content, even though I gave you the core cliff notes. There are stories after. I'm flipping through here are just some of the concept drawings of some of the characters. I'm not going to go through the stories afterwards, but I'll just leave it where we are. I'm going to say, just right now, I loved this book. It started off kind of weirdo to me. Like, I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then it just, as it kept going and going, I was like, I'm really liking this. Oh my God. And it's not even my kind of book. Like I said, I don't really go out and get Mike Mignola books because that type of thing isn't what I normally gravitate to. But this book had a way of winning me over. I don't go out and read Alan Moore books. I know the dude is a fantastic, great writer, but the way he does things, just, I respect it, but it doesn't necessarily reach out to me. So there's so many elements to this book that normally on paper would seem like it wouldn't be my jive, but it just worked for me. I loved it. This book felt lyrical. And I know that it seems, I don't know, it just seems silly to say, like, I'm just trying to make a point because, oh yeah, he's a musician and all this stuff, but it honestly did to me. And this isn't necessarily going to like go on my pull list because, like I said, it's,
Well, there's only 2 graphic novels.
oh, are there? Okay, so I don't even know.
And then there's a third one that's currently on the shelf.
Okay. This isn't, if this was an ongoing series, this isn't something that would necessarily immediately go on my pull list. But this story that I read, I really respected. And the only reason, like I said, it wouldn't is because even though I loved it and felt it was amazing, it's it's just not something I look for. It's the best way I can put it, and some people are going to probably laugh at this, is my feelings of Titanic. I thought Titanic was a utterly fantastic movie, and I hope James Cameron never makes another movie like it ever again. Like, it's just, I can respect it for what it was, but it's not what I want to see. Um, and that's what this book was. I loved it. I would read more. I'm not against it, but with so much other competition, um, I am going to go watch the show. I'm very curious to see how well the show executes the style of this book. I was very long and winded on that. I monopolized a lot of the time. Looks like no one really interjected anything because Bats didn't interrupt me. So I'm going to pass this over to Bats now to tell us his opinion.
So I had for some context, I guess. I had read this book like 10 years ago, and I really liked it 10 years ago. The TV show came out, and I was like, yeah, I read the book. I don't need to see the show. And when Ash picked this, part of me went like, oh man, I don't want to read this again because I think I've read it twice prior to this. So this is my third viewing of this. And I was reading it today. I read the whole thing in one go. And by like the third page where Ash was hooked, I was already like trying to nope out. Everything about this book is crap to me. I hate this book. I absolutely 100% like never want to hear about this book again. So much that listening to Ash go on about it, I was like, I could probably like go do something real quick and come back in 10 minutes and be okay. But I persevered, listened to his thing, and I respect that he really liked it, and that I hope he goes and reads the second one because I think the second one is better. The only character that I remotely like is number 5, and the second book is more about number 5. The things that I don't really like about this book, why I absolutely hate this book, the villains have no motive. The the villains whose names are escaped me, and I read this book today, that old timey De los Muertos mixed with old timey England. Uh, Pretty much, like My Chemical Romance as a villain. He just exists to be a plot device for the white violin, and there's no real rhyme or reason on why he wants to destroy the Umbrella Academy. It's just to recruit the Vanya, but we don't learn why he hates them, and that sucks for me because if you want your villains to, the better your villains are, the better your heroes are, and these heroes are the emo, emotional cutter type kid characters, but with the Super Friends. People talk about the Super Friends and they're like, oh, the Super Friends is really good. The only thing that sucks about it is all the heroes' personalities are interchangeable. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. All of them are interchangeable. They're all trashy. They treat each other like shit. They have no respect for one another. Not one of the 7 characters respects one or the other. They all just treat each other, they're all just witty, trashing each other, talking bad to each other. They're always fighting each other. And I get it, Mr. Monocle's like traumatized them, but there's not one character who's like a diamond in the rough and like keeps this team together other than the monkey. The
What about
monkey,
Space Boy?
no, Space Boy's a piece of shit. he treats everyone like shit too. Like,
No.
yeah, he did all he came off was the holier than thou version of Kraken. Kraken was the more real about it, and Space Boy just came off like, I'm better than you, but I'm just the same version of you. I just hide it better. That's the all I got out of him. Um
I didn't get that at all.
uh the art, this Ba, he like there's a lot of pages that are just almost the battle where they're like at the carnival is almost impossible to look at. It's just all pinks and yellows, and his style is so like as I didn't notice it. Mike Mignola, like, he's influenced by Mike Mignola, but it's like the indie like I'm not ready for big time comics, Mike Mignola.
Well, I mean, he's not Mike
And
Mignola, but like that's for sure.
no, but like now as you pointed out, like I was like, there's something about this art that just really just feels crappy to me. And like you said, you're not a big Mike Mignola fan, and neither am I, because his arts kind of has that like that weird, like blocky, chunky weirdness to it.
Hmm.
And like, excuse me, I see that now as you pointed out, and it's like, oh yeah, it's almost like if you traced Mike Mignola and then traced over your own stuff to make it something else. And then now I see it and I can't unsee it and I don't like it. Uh the book to me, like right from the get, felt like super pretentious, silly billiness that the author doesn't commit to but expects the reader to.
I didn't get that at all.
Like he's just like there's 43 people. Like I was instantly like, what happened to the other 30 30 whatever. I can terrible at simple math. Whatever happened to the other one? Oh, they just died. What? Okay. Well, why even point out 43? There was, and then you didn't mention any of this. Uh, all the like, instead of it just saying to be continued, it had this nonsense babbling. It was like, this is the first issue of a 6-part series, but this is a sub story that's part of one, and uh, there's 7 characters, and when you combine their names, it makes 43 letters, and blah blah blah. But none of this matters. And I'm like, what the fuck is this crap? Like, why did you even say this nonsense? This is stupid. Like, this is the stupid, like nonsense that has no value to the book. It actually devalues the book to me. Like you're putting these like weird nonsense, no point whatsoever blurbs in there just to like keep the reader reading nonsense. And it did not like it. It's just it felt like pretentious, silly billiness. It's like if you took like Squirrel Girl and Tom King and like you're like, all right, you guys make a book together, and they're like, okay, here's the Umbrella Academy. It's like or no, it's even better. It's almost like if Tom King and Mark Russell wrote Doom Patrol together. That's what this book is. It's silly, Billy, pretentious nonsense. Uh, and something that really, really just like made me cringe and made me feel uncomfortable. The whole book, like, if you ever read a book by like an SJW, like Mark Russell, or anything at Marvel at this point, where after you get like this weird like sickness vibe, I had this going through the whole book, and where I really was just like, by issue 3, I try to nope out. Like I like was like, I can't do this. This book is genuinely pissing me off. Genuinely, I called Ash and was like, he didn't answer, and I was like, ugh. I wanted to tell him I'm done. I can't read this anymore. But then he didn't answer. Uh, and so I just pushed through it. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna get it done. And as I got by the end, I was just so grossed out by so many elements of it. Like, there's no this is supposed to be a family, and that's not how family is. Even through, like, the worst of times, they don't treat each other like this. There's, like, no love whatsoever anywhere. There's not one glimmer of self-respect in any of the characters,
That's
and
not true.
it's just gross.
Let me interrupt you for the moment right here, because there's a scene that I have on the screen which I thought
This is the part that genuinely grossed me out.
grossed you out. I thought it
Yeah,
was
I wrote bullet points as you were going on about the book.
nice.
Sibling love. This
They're not
gen
siblings.
that no, but they were raised together and they live together. It is disgusting. It's like you're my sister. It's like, dude, that's disgusting. It's genuinely disgusting.
All right. Well,
It's actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the step sibling uh is the number one viewed porn in America right now, and I think it's absolutely disgusting. And when I read this, where she's like, "I heard a rumor that you wanted to kiss me since we're 8 years old," and she does it, I was like, "Oh, this is so disgusting."
well, I didn't take it that way because the book does not really go there.
And they call each other brother. They make out, and then
No,
say,
she just kisses him. Let me just I just want to just make a point real quick. Um, there's a scene here where the rumor's kind of chewing Space Boy out. She's like, Luther, I'm talking to you about my real life, your niece, and all you care about is our powers. You're still so obsessed with being a hero, you can. Allison, look at me. How am I supposed to relate to anyone at all, let alone your feelings about your daughter? And he's like, just giant monkey dude. I would have liked to have had a wife, a daughter. I would like to, but I think focusing on our work is probably the healthiest thing for someone like me. So help me save the world for your daughter, for Claire. I'd like to meet her someday. And then she's like, kind of has this realization, like, oh shit, like, and then she's like, Space, I heard a rumor that you've wanted to kiss me since you were 8 years old.
"That's disgusting."
Which, this is her power. This is how you learn part of what her abilities are. It has to come true. And he's just like, what? And she kisses him. And that's it. There's no, later on in the book, there's no sexual relations in the book. Later on, this is a one-time, a kiss, and then it's over. And I would agree with you. You make a good point. You make a good point. I'm not telling you how to feel. I'm not telling
But
you how to feel.
look at the imagery. She's like caressing his chest, and then the page before it's a close up of her lips, and it's very seductive. And then somewhat like Seance, that's how you say his name, right? Seance sees it and like kind of like nopes out, and it's very uncomfortably gross. And then Kraken is in love with Vyanya, and it's like this is gross. It's
Well,
all around gross to me.
okay. I took it quite differently. And I think it's probably
Well, you
because
thought it was on the level of Watchmen, so you did.
I don't think this is on the level of Watchmen. I thought it evoked feelings like Watchmen did. It had a certain tone and a flavor. Um, I was not at all. My mind did not go into the same headspace yours did on this. I took this as like, holy fuck, this is a guy. This Space Boy is a genuine. When we talk about incels, that's Space Boy. He's probably never been kissed. He's probably never felt a woman or anything. And she's going on about herself and all this stuff. And he doesn't chew her out. He doesn't do anything. He's like, look at me. This is what the fuck. I don't have time to think about these things. I'm just trying to save the fucking world. And then she has a moment of like, oh my God. Like, and the only thing that she can give him is the one thing he's never known is the kiss of a woman. And while I'm not saying that your feelings are wrong, and obviously all this is subjective. I'm just offering you a different perspective that this does not have to be twisted and gross. And because if the book later on goes off and they have sexual relationships and stuff like that, then I can go, well, yeah, Bats, your argument becomes a lot stronger. But in the here and the now, all I'm seeing is a woman trying to just give this guy one thing that he's never had and probably never will have afterwards. right before they go on to maybe all die trying to save the fucking world. So, like I said, my head did not go in that space. And I kind of feel like since you read this book twice before and you liked it twice, part of me thinks like, do you think outside influences are causing you to see the
No,
book in a
I
different light?
see when I had read this prior, I was in a I mean, you could say it's outside influences,
I don't
but
know if it is. I'm not accusing you. I'm just
no, no, no,
questioning.
no, no. I know, I understand. When you say outside influences, it I was in a different mindset when I read this. When I read this, I was this is personal, but I was really down a dark path in my life. I read this at the library for free because I couldn't afford comics. I was actually staying at the homeless shelter when I read this. I would go to the library, I'd get some comic books because I didn't want to associate with the people in the shelter. And I would just hang out on my bed and read comics that I got from the library. So pretty much any comic that I was reading at the time in that time period in my life was good because it was just I didn't want to associate and watch TV and movies with like because I didn't want to be in the spot that I was in, but that was the circumstance that I was living in. And so reading this back then, it was like, I was in a bizarre world of like depression and weird things. And so this book kind of it when you if you're in that weird like at least I'm not saying anyone who reads it and likes it is in that, but when I look back at it now, I was like, oh, it makes sense. 10 years ago when I was here, I liked this book. But now, 10 years later, and I'm doing extraordinarily well for myself in comparison to where I was 10 years ago. This book is gross. And it's also, I was gross 10 years ago. So I look at it in that kind of sense. So the outside sources, yeah, sure. But when I look as a comic book, I don't like this comic. Like the characters are like just all kind of come off just I was angry 10 years ago and I like it because everyone was just trashy and trashing on each other. And it's just that's how when I read it today, I was just like, this is just garbage, man. I do not like this book at all.
All right.
And so the outside maybe the outside influence, that is very possible.
Well, the reason I asked that question is because some of the language you used, you talked about pretentious and things like that,
No,
and I think
no, but
it's
that's a lingo that I use now,
okay.
right?
That's
You
fine.
know,
I'm just saying that it's easy, I think, to get caught up, and I'm not accusing you of anything, so don't feel the need to defend anything. I'm just saying in general, it's easy to get caught up when we're reading all this bullshit comics all the time, right? And we sit there and we read like Heroes in Crisis #6, and we're like, what the? It's evident, it's self-evident that there is pretentious bullshit in comics today. Um, so when we start reading that, we can start seeing it everywhere. You know what I'm saying? It's like
mhm.
if we don't maybe uh, control ourselves, we can start looking too hard to see things now that maybe aren't quite as guilty of it as
Uh,
it is. That's
yeah, I called my friend. Uh, well, not I had not called him. I texted. I was sitting at the local sandwich shop, and I was eating a sandwich while I was reading this, and I was like, I gotta text Bruce. He's also the artist of my avatar and the comic book we're working on. Uh, and he had bought this book. I want to say 6 7 years ago, and kind of forgot it was on his shelf because he just buys so many graphic novels. He's a graphic novel collector, and like he got caught up in his DCs and stuff, right? And then he heard that there was a show coming out, so he went and read it, and then like hit me up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it was really good." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, man, that was cool, huh?" yeah, I really like the time traveling kid, right? That was the, right. And he's like, yeah, yeah. And so he went and read these, both of them, both volumes. And I texted him and I said, hey man, I'm rereading Umbrella Academy, and I freaking hate this. And he goes, no, shut up. And I was like, no, seriously, like this is like really like trash to me. And he's like, are you serious? Don't stop reading it. I was like, I have to finish it. It's like, no, if you don't like it, just stop reading it. I was like, no, I have to read it for my stream tonight. He's like, ah, sucks to be you. It's like he's like, ah, you shouldn't read books that you don't like. I'm like, I didn't pick this. Like,
Well, I apologize to you.
no, no. So
Y-
so
y-
for you, you've had a 9 out of 9 home runs. For me, it's been a 8 out of 9. So the number is still good.
yeah, I do genuinely try to pick books I think will be very good. Um, I really do want to discover hidden gems. I do still stand by my opinions that I went through. I felt good when you had said that I had forgotten, but I remember now that you had said you had originally read it, and I was like, oh, okay. So Bats is at least gonna like this. It's probably pretty decent. Otherwise, he would have been like, "F no, I'm not gonna read this trash again." So I felt really good about it. So when you had this review, this perspective on it, it's really taken me by shock, and I kind of feel bad because
No, no, no.
I
Don't
don't.
don't feel bad. I'm kind of notorious about this just in life in general. Like I may have liked something at one point in my life, and then I come back to it later, and I'm like, I don't like this anymore. Like I've told you before,
Uh huh.
I've liked all the Christopher Nolan movies as they came out, but then it was as when I watched it as a whole, I didn't like it, and I haven't watched it. Excuse me, since when was the last one that came out? Like two. I haven't watched it since 2013. And so for like 6 years, I've been going, oh, I hate the Nolan trilogy.
Yeah,
And late
I
and
don't
late,
understand that mindset at all. Like
right.
I can't understand loving something. I'm trying to think of an example in my life that's like similar where I'm like, oh yeah, I used to love this thing and like now I hate it. And I can't think of anything.
No.
Even stuff like as a kid, you know, that hasn't aged well. I don't know if that's
Mhm.
nostalgia or not. Maybe it's nostalgia, but I look at it and go, "Oh yeah, this is not as nearly as good as I remember." But I still have an appreciation for it. I can kind of still put myself back in that mindset that I had at the time to see what I liked at the time. It may not resonate quite as well. Like a big example is Robotech. That's probably the best example I can think of currently on the spot. When I was a kid, Bats, I loved Robotech. I mean, it was like the next best thing to Star Wars to me. I go back and I watch it today and I realize, yeah, they kind of, the American translations and what they doctored it up to do, it made and it's just so dated anyway, and it's really cornball in a lot of ways. So it doesn't hold up to me. I don't have that same love for it that I once did, but I don't have an adverse reaction. I don't go and go, "Oh my god, this is garbage. What the hell was I into?" Like I still go, there was some value. I could see why I like this. It's not as great as I remember, but sure. I can't think of anything that's like opposite. Like where I just was like, oh, I used to love this, and I watched it again 10 years later, and I was like, this was trash. So it's hard for me. I'm trying to step in your shoes and relate to you, and I'm unable to.
But I do this though, where I have this like period of where I hate it, and then I go, let me try that again. Right?
Do you ever flip flop again?
I do, yeah.
Oh
That's
my
how.
god! Now you're blowing my mind.
And so like eighth grade Bats loved Limp Bizkit, right? Limp Bizkit was so great, like keep rolling, rolling, rolling. Like that was like the coolest thing, right?
Oh my god, Limp Bizkit sucks.
Like imagine like me at like 12, 13 years old, right? And that's just like this shit right now because I don't care if you don't care. Like, at like when you're like 13, 12 years old and you're like, going into that you think you're badass, but you're totally an idiot. You
Right.
know, like, I see this all the time because, like, uh, 12-year-olds come into my restaurant, and they can't, like they're too cool to, like, order their own food, you know, like, that's just and I was like, "I was here before." You know, so Limp Bizkit was a thing for me, and so then when I used to be in a band, I would be like, "I can't believe I loved Limp Bizkit. Limp Bizkit is total trash." And then, like, someone would be like, "Play it," like, the Break Stuff song, like, "It's just one of those days when you don't wanna give," you know, like and I was like, "This is trash. Turn this off. You have to turn this off. I can't take this." And then later on in my late 20s, almost my 30s, I come back to Limp Bizkit, like, because I threw on, like, 90s rock hits on YouTube while I was at work one day, and that so like, Rollin' came on, and it just, like, sparked 12, 13-year-old me. And how Eric Frame makes me laugh. Uh, and so and I was like, "This is freaking great, man. I can't believe I hated this for a while." And, like, I from time to time throw on Limp Bizkit.
Oh boy. All right, we need to definitely move on from this one. Hey, comics quirks was commenting on the thing. He said for someone's first comic, this was very well done. Someone took Neil Gaiman's master class, and I think that's a valid, whether you loved or hated the comic book. And it sounded like to me, Bats, that most of your criticisms on the book were mostly due like about the subject material. You also critiqued the art in some
Yeah, the
ways,
art just didn't do it for me.
but I never heard you say actually anything about like the structure of the writing or the layout of the
No, no, no,
story or
I think Gerard like you said, like, Gerard Way is a very talented, like,
okay. Just
creator. Like,
okay.
I
Just so
no,
I'm
I no, he Ger I respect Gerard Way in a lot of ways, but just, like, I like, y this is what this book is, 'cause I told my buddy at the retailer, he's like I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna review," because he's like, "Hey, did you watch Umbrella Academy?" I'm like, "No, but me and Ash are gonna read it and review it." And he's like, "When was the last time you read it?" I was like 10 years ago." And he's like, "Ah, ought to be interesting," because he knows me from, like,
right.
back in the day. So and, like, he knows me from when I was, like, a piece of garbage to, like, now this, like, doing great with this life person. So, I just like him seeing me grow as a person. Like, will Bat still like this? Because he knows that I flip-flop on a lot of things, you know, because I buy my comics from him. So he's just like, "But you love this." I'm like, "Not anymore."
Interesting. All right.
You
Well,
know?
so you have deeply subjective reactions to things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No, and then art is very subjective,
Mhm.
right? So
No, no, it's
and,
and it's fine. It's not a negative. I'm not saying this.
you know, like, maybe when I'm in my I'd like to right now, I, like, don't want nothing to ever read this. I don't even wanna hear about it, right? But 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 I'm curious, like, I'd like to check it out in my 40s. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
and see, like, where I'm at in my 40s. Like, will I be like, "Oh, I remember why I liked this when I was 20," or will I be, like, doubling down on the 30-year-old Bats who's like, "Yep, this is I should have never read this again." Like, you know?
Um,
So,
just so we're not ignoring our participants here, Tahalim, he's read both the volumes. He didn't really make much comments.
maybe he
Um,
didn't like like 'em.
well, maybe. Um, he says he has the first two volumes of the
Comic quirks,
series.
you're actually right.
Um, but Comics Works says yes, it was pretty damn good. The TV show has little to do with the graphic novel. Mignola is how you pronounce Mignola.
Migdala. I'll say it however I wanna say it.
Well, he's just telling you how to say it. You don't have to listen to him. Eric Breen lives in Kentucky, where
They have good fried chicken, I heard.
um, where this happens all the time. Allegedly, he's talking about brothers
Yeah,
kissing sisters. dueling banjos in the background. That is a creepy ass movie, Eric. That movie is still to this day disturbed me. If anyone doesn't know what I'm talking about, there's a movie called Deliverance. Um, Bats, if you haven't seen it, don't see it. um, Comic Squirt says it's all my fault, or it's all your fault, Ash, meaning me.
What's all your fault?
Just
I mean, you did pick this
I was
book.
apologizing. Yeah, I was apologizing to you about the book, and he was like, "It's all your fault, Ash." Um. So yeah, I guess Tahalim didn't have much to say, or maybe he's intimidated by your harsh review and doesn't want you to be mad at him.
No, no. I mean, like what you like, right? Like it's like everyone's different. Like there's no like it's fun to have to agree with people, but it's also more fun, I think, a lot of times to to have disagreements. Like you and I are on totally different spectrums of how we feel about this book, but we find common ground where we're like Gerard Way is talented. So like
It's a good point. I want to use that as a to bring up a point about I was thinking about today actually. And I've been wanting to comment on the show and different things. Like you guys are in the audience or listening. One of the reasons I approached Bats. Like I can't say full names, 4 letters. Jesus. Um, one of the reasons I approached Bats initially about doing a team up show like this is because of Bats' div- uh, differing tastes. If you watch a lot of shows, especially on the internet, you watch a lot of streams or people and doing stuff, you're gonna find a lot of circle jerks. Um, I think one of the values that our show has to offer is that Bats and I we agree on some things, right? Obviously, we're both pro Comics Gate. We're both anti SJW, and like some certain core things we agree on. But like our
both
taste in
like
comic books,
Christian and conservative and like world we have a lot of similar worldviews, but when it comes to like art and taste,
well, in
we're
comics,
totally
which is the focus of our show,
yeah.
I mean, I think Christopher Nolan Batman films are the masterpiece, some of the best superhero movies ever made. Bats doesn't even like them.
I think Batman Forever is the best Batman film.
Right. So um, so there's just examples like that. I didn't pick someone to team up with that was just like an echo what I had to say. And a lot of these streams that are more popular than ours, you look at them, they'll get like 8 people on the stream at the same time, and they all agree on everything pretty much. It's just a big echo chamber, and I don't think that offers anything good for me and Bats because honestly, I do learn things from Bats, and the reason I have my points of view is because I'm constantly challenging myself with people with differing views. I want to hear Bats. I want to hear. I mean, I wish Bats enjoyed this book the way that I did, but I do
But
want to
I
hear his
but I
different
did but I
perspective
did
because
but I did enjoy it 10 years ago the way you did.
okay, well, maybe ten
So
years
like
ago I'll hate it. No. But my point is while I want him to enjoy it, I respect that he didn't. I respect hearing his opinion, and sometimes I can walk away. Not in this case, but I can walk away sometimes with a new perspective and go, I didn't actually look at it from that angle, and that's changing how I feel. Um, and usually that happens more on the positive side when I like dislike something, but someone else really likes it. What I do is I try to go like, hey, well, explain to me why you like it so much, and then maybe there's some value in there that I'm not seeing. But regardless, my point is that I hope that there's some value to you guys that we disagree. Sometimes you're going to agree with Bats, sometimes you'll agree with me. Hopefully, you'll agree with me sometimes. Um, um, and that ultimately that offers something to discuss, and that it's interesting to you. So uh, I don't know. I just wanted to take that time to point that out because I think we're the only show really doing this. I don't think anyone else has multiple people on a panel where they don't all just think alike. And with that, I wanted to leave this book and our Comixology thing, Bats, I picked this book for the week, which I give 5 stars. I'm assuming you give it 1 star.
Can I give it half a star?
No.
I have to give one full.
1 is terrible. 1 means awful, god awful.
What,
Two,
what, what
two,
if I
two
said
means 2 means bad. 3 means it's average. 4 means it's good, and 5 is like creme de la creme. So 1 is terrible. Don't think
so?
of it
You
as a
see
star.
this as like a top sirloin steak, where I see it as McDonald's.
Yes, I honestly, and here's the thing: my review of it isn't necessarily indicative of my enjoyment of it. Like, I enjoyed the hell out of Exo Manowar when we did that, and I enjoyed Birthright. Like, my subjective reactions on those books, on top of the quality of the book, like, was outstanding.
Mhm.
I just respected the hell out of this book. You
Okay.
know, even the parts where I was just like, because I'm with you on some of your points. I'm like, yeah, these guys aren't really a lovable band of characters, right? These aren't.
Yeah, for me, I wish there, like, when I finally finished it, I was like, I wish there was like one character who was like trying to stop all of them from fighting each other.
Yeah.
You know, like
Well,
like
the monkey
with the
was.
X-Men, like Kitty Pryde was that kind of character, right? Or like Jubilee, like the girls that like were
Uh-huh.
Wolverine,
Uh-huh.
right? They're always like, guys, stop it, right? Like
Yep.
there was no one there to do that. And the monkey was kind of could have been that character, but it wasn't. He wasn't.
So the reason I didn't feel the same way as you on that aspect is because I didn't see that as the point of this book. Whereas a book like X-Men or Justice League or those type of books, you are supposed to love those characters. Like, that's part of the reason you read those books.
Mhm.
This book, to go back to a comparison to Watchmen, I don't like the characters in Watchmen either. I think most of the characters in Watchmen are a bunch of dicks and assholes, and I just am like, you can all die.
See, what's funny too is I went and I didn't reread Watchmen. I watched the motion comic,
That's close enough.
right? It's pretty terrible because it's just one voice. They didn't get a cast. They just got like one guy to do all the voices. So like Silk Spectre is like a dude still.
Well, sure, but it's just like a dude reading you the book.
Yeah, yeah. So but what was interesting to me when I had read it originally when I was 18 years old, and then going back to it at 32 when I was 18, I was on the side of Night Owl on his like political view of the situation. As and even Ozymandias, I was like, yeah, Ozymandias is right. But at 32-year-old Bats, I was like Rorschach and Comedian are right. And I kind of like I was like, wow, like I aged as a person so much that like my view of the world changed.
Well, that does it. That happens, Bats. Welcome to
Yeah,
adulthood.
yeah, like because like you've like we've all heard the term. It's like uh in your 20s, if you're not liberal, you don't have a heart. But if in your 30s and 40s and you're not conservative, well, then you're just not smart.
Yeah. Well, at the risk of going off the total derailing here, I just was trying to make a point about in Watchmen. I don't necessarily like the characters, but that's not the point of Watchmen. You're not reading
Mhm.
Watchmen because you're like, hey, we're going to introduce you to this lovable band of characters you're going to keep reading every month. It's to tell a bigger picture story. Whoa, what are you doing, buddy?
Sorry, this book stressed me out. I'm having a cookie at 12.
Well, just mute your mic. That's all.
I-
Sorry about that. Nothing like
Sorry.
professional audio here. Um, it's it reminded me of that sense where it's like there's these characters aren't necessarily, at least in this book, I didn't get the perception like you're supposed to love them. They're just more catalysts and they're meant to serve the story, the bigger picture type of story. And that's kind of why I forgive that. If this were like an ongoing monthly book, and it's kind of like what I said in the end, where I was like, I'm not going to go jump and put this on my pull list because it's not something that I'm dying. Like, this is my cup of tea. Like, this is what I've been looking for. This is my bag. It's not. It's really outside of my wheelhouse. But like Watchmen, it's something that, even though it's outside of my wheelhouse, it was so well executed that I was able to make an exception from my personal taste, if that makes sense. Like, I was like, oh, okay. I normally don't care about love stories on a sinking ship, but it was so well done, I'll give it a pass. Like, that's kind of how I was thinking. My Titanic reference. So, not to dwell on this any longer. You guys all know how we feel. You guys have all had plenty of chance to tell us how you feel. Try to comment all that. Moving forward, Bats, you had something that I told you to put on the back burner. Do you remember what that was?
No, I do, but first I gotta pick my pick of the
Oh,
week.
that's right. I'm jumping the gun. Go ahead.
All right, so
Here's my punishment, folks.
yeah, so I have like, I know you and I have like a behind the scenes. We have a list, and I put a good handful of things that I want to read on there.
The
But there's
magician
some,
never gives away their secrets, Bats. Come on. Keep the
well,
magic alive.
I'll teach you how to do the double. Never mind. I used to be a street magician. That's how much of a weirdo I was.
And then you showed everyone the tricks.
Yeah, no, I didn't show everyone, but I mean, if you want to know how to do the double card lift,
go. God.
I'll teach you how to do a double card lift. My cat is like harassing me. So yeah, we've had a 2 out of 2 success rate, and I'm hoping it's a 3 out of 3 success rate.
Oh no! Don't. You're going back to the well. Even the cat knows.
My pick of the week is Ninjak Volume 1 from 2015. Written by our boy Matt Kint.
All right. Well, I mean, I cannot complain. I am very much looking
Art.
forward.
Art by Butch Geis, Clay Mann, and Juan Jose Ripe.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to this. I actually found, by the way, Bats, I found an animated comic of the first issue of this arc, by the way. There's a company that does like takes comics and throws like graphics and animation and stuff into these. And
Of Ninjak Volume 1, Weaponer?
Yeah. So, well, they have more issues, but the first issue is free. So I was like,
Oh,
oh,
okay.
I'll download this and see what it's like. And I was like, oh, this is really freaking cool. I'm not cool enough where I'm going to pay $3 an issue for the rest, but that's only because I can get them free on Comixology.
So you have the ability to veto this because it's 29 pages. 229 pages.
Well, I'm not going to veto it, even though I kind of want to, only because out of we'll have 10 episodes, 3 of them are Valiant. I didn't want to overload with Valiant, but I don't think that's a strong enough reason.
I mean, if you want to, you can. I have another pick.
No, we'll go ahead and do this one. The Valiant ones have been worthy picks, and I do believe Valiant needs more attention. They do fall in line with the theme of what we're doing here, is to bring attention to good comics, to comics that people might not go and read on their own, but maybe once they do, they'll go, oh, look what I've been missing all this time. Because I'm gonna take this opportunity here to single out my boy Eric Breen for a moment. Who Eric, I have deep respect for, has been a great knowledge base for the channel.
I love Eric Breen.
And has been a dedicated supporter of the channel. So I want to clarify that. Stop making noise in the back.
So I apologize.
Mute button. But Eric is also a wounded veteran, so to speak, and has, to my knowledge, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, has turned his back on much of the comics industry because they have burned him too bad. And I've been this big advocate of promoting and being like, look, the comics industry is not dead. It's not. There is a lot of bad things in the comic industry, and when we get online, we focus on that, right? It's like if you go on CNN, you would literally think that Trump was Hitler because it's 24-hour coverage of how
Wait,
Trump
wait,
is.
wait, wait. You're saying he's not Hitler?
Yeah, unbelievable. Because it's just
Crazy.
we went out to a restaurant last night, had dinner, and my buddy and I and his friend, and there was a table full of elderly people. I don't want to say elderly, but like senior citizens, right? It's like
Same thing.
well, I think of elderly as like 80s and
Okay,
90s,
okay.
like
So you're saying they're old enough to get 10% off at the
yeah,
restaurant?
yeah. Um, plus I'm getting older, bats, and so I was like, I gotta be a little bit more respectful.
55 and up.
I'm gonna be there soon. Um,
Eric Bring gets 10% off.
we just lost a viewer.
He knows I love him.
There was there were multiple couples, right? So there was at least like 6 people. I didn't really count. And while we were eating dinner, but their conversation went on to politics, as older people are wont to do. And man, were they just going off on Trump and all this stuff. And it was just like, all I could think about was just like, that's because old people get all their information the old-fashioned way through the boob tube. And if you turn on the news, unless you listen to Fox, every single thing out there, everything is just anti-Trump, bombarded over and over and over and over and over. Well, so likewise, in the world of comics, if you are paying attention to anything but, I don't know, if it's just comics are terrible. The end is here. Marvel's on fire. DC's pouring gas on themselves. Everything is just shit. The SJWs have conquered everything. There's nothing left. All of our heroes are dead. Bendis has killed DC. It's all this hyperbolic stuff. And while there's some value to this and so forth of these comments, it's not 100% true. There is still great stuff in comics, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to segue into what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
What am I reading, Bats? This comics right now. The only thing I can think about is Hawkman.
That's
Holy
a
shit!
freaking great comic, man.
I feel regret. I did a review of it. You did a review. You did a really great review, by the way.
Thank you. Mine wasn't really a review though. It was like,
well, okay, your video. Your video.
I was trying to do what do they call arrows? What's the word that? What's the thing that Doug Arntz likes? It's like
I don't know. Are you thinking of
Aerocentric or I forget.
I don't know.
It turns into a review.
Sure, whatever. You did a video on the book, and it was a good video. I liked it. I tried to do a review of the book as well, and I'm not happy with it. And the reason
I liked it.
I appreciate that. The reason I'm not happy, I kind of have this regret, is because I don't feel like I did it justice. I cannot stop thinking about this book. Everything you said about the book is right on and more. Everything I said about the book, I feel is like right on, but way more. Like, and I don't feel I have.
Hold on, really quick. Melissa Harris says, "See you guys next time."
Oh, are you leaving, Melissa? Well, okay.
Good night, Melissa. Thanks for coming.
Yes, Melissa.
Thank
you.
It's always a pleasure having you.
Yeah, and I'm sorry we didn't get to a lot of your chats tonight. Usually we have that at the end. So if you thought we were just ignoring chats earlier, it's just because we're trying to get through the show and we're long-winded and blah, blah, blah. We'd just be here for 5 hours. But we do read them all. So what I was saying is Hawkman is so good, and I don't feel that I have the eloquence. I don't feel like I have the capacity to describe how good this book is and what it's doing for me. This book isn't just the best comic book series I'm reading right now. If I went back to the greatest time in my history of getting comics, whatever year that is, when I go, oh, this book would hold up to anything. There's not a time where I can just go, well, back in the day, this wouldn't have. No, this is good.
Hmm.
Venditti is having a master class right now on Hawkman, and so people going, "Oh, DC's dead to me," or this or that. I'm just like, oh my god, people. This what's wrong is this negative attitude, and I understand it. Believe me, because I make videos about the
Bad books.
bullshit in the comic industry. I'm even worse on Twitter about it. We're bombarded being part of Comic Skate and things like that, and associating with people. It's just we can't get away from it, and it's becomes this thing where it's so permeating the industry and the hobby that it's sometimes hard to see the good that's there. Um, and I just wanted to like promote Hawkman is just a singular example. It's not the only one. It's part of the reason why we do this whole
I,
series that we're doing.
I,
Um,
I, I really want you to take a chance on Supergirl. I really do. I think you'll. I know, man. I know. Like, I'm almost willing to, like, if I can be like, call your shop and be like, put $20. Like, here's my credit card number. Like, you know, put $20 on a gift card, and when Ash on Comics shows up, he can only buy Supergirl with that $20. Like, I'm willing to do that because I want you to be like, it's not on the level of Hawkman where you're like, oh my gosh, this book is astonishing. But it's on the level of like, oh, this is how you do this type of comic.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. It.
it's like where you're like, it's not just like so the part of a good part of Supergirl is that because she's in space and she's not on Earth,
I have to say,
she doesn't have the yellow sun.
I have to say real quick. Just I'm not gonna take over, but I really like that. Supergirl is more appealing to me being away from Earth because remember I've told you before
Mhm.
I don't like there just being like a super female Superman.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so now that she's away and she's like off in space, she's not in on Earth. She doesn't take away from Superman, but she can still have her own adventures and you can yeah, so that is actually
And
more appealing to me.
and her adventure is going into space to find out who Rogal Zar is. So like in the Bendis books, you're like, well, what the fuck's going on with Rogal Zar? That's because that attention has gone to Supergirl, and she has his axe in her his. So she doesn't have her powers, but she does have this axe that feeds off her anger, and it gets more powerful the more angry she gets, and so she has to control her anger, but also has to get upset to use it.
Hmm.
So it's like it's a very interesting power set for her,
Right.
and there's a lot of drama and like just those things that like were just normal in comics just like 10 years ago where like it's like you're like, "Oh, I remember why I like comics." Like it has that soap opera uh power fantasy. That's all it is. It's soap opera power fantasy. It just happens to be with Supergirl. And
Um
when you put it up against the other book with Superman in action, it's almost like it's shocking. It's almost like it's as shocking as if like you were reading like if a Kitty Pride series was out and it was better than X-Men. You know, it's like that.
yeah. No, no, I
It's,
get what you're saying. And I have been watching your reviews of it, as well as some other people. I I would be curious to read it for sure. I would not be opposed to reading it. I am not going to add it to my pull list because I feel asking, even though it's probably good, I'm sure that it's better than Superman in Action Comics. Asking $4 for me to buy a Supergirl book month after month, especially when it falls under Bendis's purview. So when you talk to me about things like, oh, she's got Rogolzar's axe and she's trying to figure out who he is and what's going on, and I go, my brain is like, that's really cool. That's a great concept for a story. I want to follow that. Oh, wait a second. The writer who's doing the story doesn't have the right to actually give us that information. That has to come from Bendis. So it's just a tease. We're not actually going to get. We're getting a writer utilizing that as a story. What do you call it? Like a catalyst for a story and for adventures off in space. But we won't actually get the resolution we're looking for because that's Bendis's thing and he controls Superman. And
Yeah, it has that element. Remember, like with Flash Annual #2 and just the Flash books that went on recently with
right.
Joshua Williamson. You're like, this dude's writing those Tom King stories better than Tom King.
Yeah,
It has.
I believe you. Like my point is, I believe that the writing is good and the writer's doing a good job, and I trust your reviews. But at the same time, I also believe that the writer's hand is tied behind their back, and I really don't like buying into something where the creator doesn't actually have full control. And I think at
Yeah,
this point, like the creator is writing with their hands tied behind their back, and they're doing something really impressive. You're like, holy shit! Even with your hands tied behind your back, that's pretty good. But ultimately, they're not going to be able.
Eric Breen says Peter David had the best take on Supergirl, and I haven't read it, but you're not the first person who said that to me, and I am in. So the reason I pick up Supergirl is it's one of those books that I read for 6 months or so, and then I drop, and then like I come back to it 6 months to a year later and do it again. It's just one of those books.
Yeah, and Supergirl, unfortunately, is one of those characters that I just wish didn't exist.
No, yeah, and I understand that. Like, but like my thing is I'm more I like the legacy characters more than I like the regular,
Oh,
essentially. Like, no, I love Superman, but uh it's always like it's always weird to me because uh I've always and I don't say this often, but I've always been a big fan of like female superheroes.
you don't say this often. You say this all the time.
Do I?
At least to me. I don't know.
Okay, maybe to you, maybe like it's just not on
It's
record,
got
I
to the
think.
point now where if I see a red-headed superhero, I'm like, oh, Bats would be into this.
Yeah, okay. But like, like I collect like a good handful of like female leads, so it's just
Well, I will be truthful. I am not generally into female superheroes.
and yeah, and I think that's very common, because it is a, you know, it's a boy's hobby.
It
It is
is.
what
No,
it
it,
is.
it really is. And I think
It
we
is.
need to start. I don't know. I'm not say take it back, but we need to stop cowering from saying that. I think
No, yeah,
society's
absolutely.
conditioning us to be like, "How dare you say that's misogynist?" No, it's not. It was a boys' hobby, just like Boy Scouts were a thing for boys until progressives had to come in and say, "You gotta let girls in too."
But
Um,
there's no boys in the Girl Scouts.
yeah, there's no, of course, but boys don't want to be in girls' things. You
No.
know, like boys are perfectly happy saying, "Go do your girl stuff and have fun. We'll applaud you." But girls are going like, "What are you doing over there?
Boys
Boy
don't say that.
stuff.
They're like, "Ew, you're weird."
We're doing
You're
boy
stupid.
stuff. Let us in." Okay. Okay, well now you got to do it like this. No, that's not how it's done. But that's not for girls. Yes, we told you that in the beginning it wasn't for girls. It was boy stuff. Yes, but now you've got girls a part of it. So you got to make it more girly. Go the hell away. Oh, that's misogynist.
Yeah, but like like Justice League Dark when I first saw the lineup, I was like, "Oh, dope. It has Wonder Woman as the leader and it has Zatanna in it. That's awesome." And it has Swamp Thing and Detective Chimp. Like Detective Chimp is one of those like really obscure DC characters that I really like. And then I have like my favorite female superhero as the leader. And then you got like Swamp Thing. If you haven't read the saga of Swamp Thing,
No, I need to.
oh,
Everyone's
you haven't? Okay,
no, no. Remember, I'm a
it's
DC noob.
I know, but it's one of those. To me, it's like Watchmen. It's one of those books that like people just read. Like it's like
Well, yes, I get the historical relevance of it. Some people, it's one of the few books that actually gets compared to being better than Watchmen. There's only a few books that people legitimately will try to argue being better than Watchmen. It's become fun to say as a joke because we put Watchmen as like, okay, that's the pinnacle, which I don't think it is,
I don't either.
but we put that as the pinnacle book, and then we'll joke, like Ryan Stegman and Donny Cates would
Mhm.
be like, Venom's better than Watchmen, like, but that's in jest. There's only a few books that can genuinely, to comic historians, to pilfer a word there will legitimately argue, okay, this is Watchmen territory, and that's that Swamp Thing book, and that makes me go, okay, it has that level of significance. I should read this. But it's also extremely a DC thing. Like Watchmen is kind of neutral. You don't ever have to read it. It's like has nothing to
Mhm.
do with DC.
I mean, yeah, the saga of Swamp Thing crosses over into Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right.
That's how,
But it's
yeah.
also part of DC continuity. It's
Hmm.
you know. So
But it also kind of stands alone on itself. Like if like like a hipster was like, "Ooh, I heard of this this Swamp Thing. I remember the cartoon as a kid. I liked it." Like those people who are like
yeah.
artsy fartsy people.
Yeah, that's also kind of the reason I haven't read it too, because I also
Yeah,
feel like it's one of those books I'm like, it's this pretentious thing that everyone. So I don't know. Eventually, I'll get
yeah,
to it.
it's I will say as a comic book fan, but especially as a DC zombie. I don't know. We don't have a like a demeaning slogan like the Marvel zombies. What are we? But as a DC fan, uh, the saga of Swamp Thing and just Alan Moore writing the DC characters, I think Alan Moore writing the DC characters under a strong editorial control, be like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. That's cool. That's cool. No, definitely not that, but that's awesome. That's where Alan Moore, to me, for me personally, is the best Alan Moore.
Fair enough.
Like Watchmen is cool, and what else have I read I think that's all I've read. That's uh not a DC book. Yeah.
You didn't read Alan Moore's Stormwatch, did you?
No, I didn't read that.
Alan Moore's Spawn issue.
Possibly.
Remember that back in the, oh, you weren't collecting comics in the 90s, that's right.
No, but I collected all the issues of Spawn up to about 110 something.
Wow.
So
So you,
and
okay.
and I have read them all. So
Wow. Okay. Yeah, there was this time right around when Spawn hit like issue 10 where McFarlane got this great idea where he's like, I'm going to get the best writers in the business to write my book. But it only gave him like one issue each. So there's like one issue by Frank Miller, one issue by Alan Moore. Like it's like yeah. That's not
so this kind of gives me a segue about a topic I wanted to bring up. Who is your comic book writer trinity? Like, who are your three most like influential? Not influential. What's the word? Uh, who are your who are your top three comic book writers of all time? Like,
that's a really, really good.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's Chris Claremont and Frank Miller, but who's the third one?
Okay, so Frank Miller, absolute number one. Boom, done. Like there's just I don't even have to think. Um, no one has. I mean, every in his prime, which is everything up to Dark Knight 2, is just everything he did was in my favorite books of all time. Like he just did not miss a beat.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Claremont is in there, but only because of the quantity of his work. When you take that 17-year first run of X-Men that he did, and just that massive work and that body, there was plenty in that body of work where you're like, oh, that was a dull issue, or like the dude was not flawless, right? Like we hold him to that level because of what he did. Like no, it'll probably never be replicated in comics history. As a whole, that product was amazing. But
Mm-hmm.
if you just told me today, hey, Chris Claremont's writing this issue, I can just be like, whatever. Like I don't think he's such a magical writer that whatever he does turns to gold. He just did an amazing run that I cannot ignore. It's among my favorite. It's my favorite comic run of an ongoing series that I've ever read. It's as a whole. So he has to be in the argument. But I'm starting to think some modern writers.
Bendis.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Modern writers, I think, honestly, are better than the writers of the 90s. I think the 90s were better comics, and the lesser writing talent was doing better with comics because they had better editing. They didn't have to write 10 books a month like Bendis is doing. They wrote like 1 or 2 books a month, so they were able to focus more. But I believe the top writers today are doing work that you just didn't see back then. And I don't have enough under my belt to feel like I can accurately qualify an argument. Like I think Venditti is rapidly climbing this list for me, simply because, well, Hawkman is 10 issues in now, and it just, like Eric Breen says, by the way, earlier he was like, you guys convinced me, I'm gonna get the trade, blah blah blah. I read the first issue and I liked it, and I want to respond to Eric. The first issue is the worst issue. Like
Yes, it is.
And it's not a bad
I
issue.
wasn't sure if I was gonna come back.
It wasn't a bad issue, but like each issue gets better and better.
So yeah, with the first issue, I kind of was just like, okay, yeah, this was fun, generic adventure time.
Yeah, me too.
Like not the cartoon, but like adventure.
Yeah.
Like oh, he goes and gets a MacGuffin and Indiana Jones and stuff. It's Indiana Jones with wings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I 100% agree. And then you read the next issue, you're like, oh, okay.
Well, that was really awesome.
That was pretty good. Next issue, oh, that's even better. Okay, keep going. 4. Then you get to 7, and you're like, oh my god. And then you're like, okay, there's no way that issue 8 can be on the same level. Like issue 7 was just this peak. It's got to take a dip, but then it doesn't. And then issue 9, and you're like, oh my god. When the cliffhanger of issue 9 happens, you're just like, okay. Then issue 10 happens. You're just like, when is this? I keep waiting for it to have a lull book. Because even Tomasi's run, on a detective, I was lauding it, but he had a dip in his run, and everyone does. You can't, but Venditti's not. And then I go read Venditti's book that he wrote, Exo Manowar. Oh my god, blew my mind. So
I've been meaning to buy that trade paperback because it's only $10, and I've been meaning to give it to my normie friend who likes like fantasy novels.
Right.
And be like, so I feel like he'll be into it. Like it's a nut. Like he likes sci-fi and fantasy, and I feel like it's a mix of it's like
of Exo.
It's not up his. It's not in his hitch of things he would buy, right? But I think if he read it, he would really he'd be like, oh, like, I think it would open him up to something new and interesting to him. Like, he likes, like he likes stuff like, what's it? Birthright. He likes stuff like that,
Oh
right?
yeah, Birthright would, if you like fantasy novel, like read someone who likes fantasy stories, fantasy novels or whatever. Birthright is
But he also likes sci-fi. He likes, like, the dragons and wizard stuff, but he also likes the, like, laser guns in space.
okay.
So,
So
like,
I want to just focus on your question real quick so we can get past it. It's very difficult for me to answer that question.
good
So
morning, Doom Guy. Sorry, I just wanted to say hi to this guy. He says,
okay.
Doom Guy, good morning from the UK. Good
Good
morning
morning,
from
Doom
Napa,
Guy.
California.
Yeah. So the Doom Guy. The question is, what's my top 3 tier writers? So I'm gonna, as of right now, I'm just gonna put it with a qualifier on it. I'm gonna put Frank Miller, Chris Claremont for his accomplishment, and then I'm gonna throw in Venditti just as the dude is super hot right now, and all I can think about when I want to get new comics is what else has Venditti written. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna
Have you Were you reading his Green Lantern stuff?
yeah, I've got the whole. I'm trying to catch up. I have to. I'm so backlogged, but I now have the entire trade thing that I'm
Cole
collecting
collection,
through.
his whole run.
His whole, yeah, through Comixology sales that I've been trying to accumulate. Um, oh, and Comic Book Black Belt has joined us. Welcome to the show.
That's a cool ass name.
That is a cool last name. So I hit the question right back at you. What is your trilogy? And anyone in the audience, I would like to know. Eric
Eric,
Green says
Eric, yeah,
his
go ahead.
Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, and Jerry Conway. Now that's a trilogy of guys that are like kind of all like from the same era. I mean, Stan Lee goes
Roy,
way back, I know, but I don't think Stanley's
Roy
right.
Thomas and Jerry Conway are like 70s to 80s.
Right, but I think that's when Stan Lee actually became good. Like I think Stan Lee's early work sucked. I think that's my personal opinion. I think Stan Lee became good after Roy Thomas took over. Let me put it that way.
So, number one on my list is Stan Lee.
Okay.
As you trashed on him. Uh,
I love Stan Lee. I
I
just
know,
don't
I
think
do. I know.
he's.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
I don't.
I love his run on Spider-Man. It's like every time I read Stan Lee Spider-Man, it really inspires me as a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes, it's this simple. It's like, here's a cool looking character fighting another cool looking character with I got these personal problems that I gotta take care of. It's that simple.
So real quick, while you're on the topic of Stan Lee, is your number one. One of my favorite comic book stories of all time is a Silver Surfer story that Stan Lee wrote called frick, I can't remember the name. But he wrote it and Mobius illustrated it. And
Oh wow. Wow.
he did it back in the 90s, and I got it just because I was like, oh hey, Stan Lee's writing something like a mainstream Marvel character. Back then, all Stan Lee did was like he had his own little comic company for a while.
Kaboom or Kablam or whatever.
He would write all his weird, yeah, but like
How?
he didn't write like Spider-Man or so I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I love Silver Surfer and Stan Lee's writing it. Holy shit! Oh my god, Mobius is drawing it. I just was picking it up just because, and then I read it and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. And to this day, it's one of my favorite comic books of all. It's a 2-issue miniseries, like it's really small. I think they're prestige format, but whatever. I have these books. Have you read these books?
I have not.
If Stan Lee is your number one guy, you gotta. I'll let you read them.
Yeah. See, what's great about Stan's work is it's almost an endless rabbit hole. He has, like you were saying with Chris Claremont, the quantity of his of his books is so vast. And the same goes with Stan Lee. Like I love his Spider-Man and I love his Fantastic Four. And his X-Men, it's a thing, but it's not, you know, like
Quirks
I,
makes a funny comment. Stanley was so good with his X-Men that they reprinted it like it was still part of the storyline. Oh, that's so true. Yeah, no, Stanley's X-Men was not good. That was not a good example of
but
Stanley.
but but Jack Kirby made it like entertaining.
I could argue that the fact that it was being canceled against that, but
But you know, it's like Stan and Jack's Fantastic Four was like, this is how good we are. And it's like, but Stan and Jack's X-Men is like, hey, we're trying to capture the magic we're already doing right over here. It's like, yeah, stop it. Okay, but I'm gonna keep reading because it's YouTube. Anyway, so Stanley number one. I'm
okay.
sure you can guess number two.
Number 2, Chuck Dixon.
Yes, sir. Chuck Dixon, number two. Chuck, for me, he's the first name I ever recognized in comics when I first started. And I was like, wow, this dude does everything. But really, all I read was Batman comics. You know, so it's like, uh, and yeah, he also just has he's huge. He has, his comic book writing is so huge that he's the most prolific comic book writer in comic book history. No one has written more pages of comics than Chuck Dixon. But he, like, everything that I like about Batman and Nightwing and Tim Drake, like the characters that I really like in the Batman universe, it all stems from Chuck's writing. So Chuck's my number two. My
Okay.
number three is Marv Wolfman.
Interesting.
Uh, yeah, I'd really like you to read some Marv Wolfman because I think you would be like pleasantly surprised. So Marv basically, you
Didn't
know,
he write that new super? Well, not new, but it's a new release. That big $10
yeah.
Superman.
The one that everyone was ranting and raving about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yes,
on
he
my
did.
wish list. I'm waiting for it to have a Comixology sale so I can pick that sucker up.
So what Marv is best known for is Teen Titans. And when DC was at at their lowest of, oh, this might be it for us. Marv Wolfman, you know, had left Marvel, went to DC, and just went. It's a fact. He's like copied his buddy Chris Claremont and just applied it to the DC characters, and it essentially his Teen Titans with George Perez saved their company. Eric Brain's going on about Airboy again.
I'm resisting the urge to. Never mind. I'm open a huge can of worms here. I'm just gonna
so
keep your mouth
so
shut, Ash.
let's see. Sergeant Betts, have you read Tomb of Dracula? Wolfman wrote 65. No, I have not, but I'd like to. Uh yeah, so Wolfman, he created a lot of characters that are household names now, like Starfire and Raven and Cyborg. He wrote Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah,
So it's like,
he's a big name. The only reason I'm not familiar is because all the guys you mentioned, except for Chuck Dixon, and Chuck Chuck Dixon bounced around, but Marv, from what I know, he was mostly a DC guy. I don't recall.
he wrote Fantastic Four for a while, right before John Burns.
I see. Yeah, Fantastic Four never interested me when I was young.
Yeah. So he's essentially DC Comics is Chris Claremont. Like he can But what the difference though? What this is the difference between them, except for his New 52 stuff. So we'll exclude that. So he can kind of come back to a book, and he's still good. Like you said, oh, if Chris Claremont like came and wrote something, you wouldn't be that interested. You'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Like if like Marv Wolfman is doing something, I'm going to check it out. Uh,
Okay.
but I did have that moment. Now as I recall, as I said it out loud, I had that moment recently, and I even spent $2 to tell England Teen on a super chat one time that because he was talking about Cyborg being canceled, and because the book was terrible, and I spent $2 to tell England Teen and like, so, just so he said it and read it, but it said Marv Wolfman is writing Cyborg next month, and the numbering is staying the same. And I read the first two issues, and I was just like, nope, I am not reading this. This would have worked for me in as a Teen Titans Spotlight from '83, but in a 2016 comic or 2017, yep, not for me. So yeah, so Marv Wolfman's my number 3. I'm not hearing any audio on my end. That's weird. I don't know if Ash vanished or what. Hit F, press F for sound if you're in here and you hear sound, because I don't hear no Ash. That's very weird. Hmm. This is bizarre.
What's up?
Where'd you go?
Oh boy, you don't pay attention to your text, do you?
Oh no, I didn't.
All right, a little bit of behind the scenes magic for our audience here. Ash or Bats and I have this little system where I send him a text if I have to go to the bathroom or something, so he can keep the show going live. But it only works if he actually follows these texts. And
Where did you send this text?
dude, I texted your phone and I sent you the Discord DM like you wanted to set up in the beginning. I did 2 different forms because
I
I'm like,
have no text.
he's probably not gonna get these.
Yeah, I don't
Anyways,
have a text. I don't have a text.
all right. Anyways, now that we've exposed the magic some more,
Exposed.
once you lose the illusion batch, you can never get it back.
We're professionals. They know it.
You're probably too young to remember the time when Star Wars, you could actually see the strings holding the X-wings and TIE fighters, and there was these little black boxes that went around them, and I can remember distinctly.
I had the old VHSs. I do remember that.
I can remember distinctly when my friends pointed this out to me because I hadn't seen it before. Like my mind just didn't allow me to see it, and they're like, "Look right there." And then forever forward, I could never not see it. It was like a glaring beacon. And I was just like, "Oh, you bastards." It's like in Fellowship of the Ring when my friend pointed out where the little truck is in the field. I'm like, I didn't want to see that. Now I can never unsee. So yeah, now once we've destroyed the illusion, it's forever gone for our audience.
Yeah, there's a thing. So I watch a lot of Power Rangers, and sometimes they're pretty good at like not doing it, but there's times where it happens. Because all the Power Rangers or Sentai or whoever, whatever you want to call it, their helmets all have that reflective surface on their helmets. for their eyes, like big sunglass reflection. Sometimes when they do a close up, it's like you see the reflection of the camera crew right in their face. And that just always, every time I see it, I'm like, there's the camera crew.
Oh boy.
But like, it doesn't really so much bother me because then there's also, I know that that's not a giant robot fighting a giant monster in a town. That's a guy in a rubber suit with another guy in a rubber suit, and that's a cardboard city. you know?
Yeah. Even though like I know some things, like I like my mind. I can enter a suspension of disbelief, and I'll let myself get immersed into what's going on. So even if a special effect isn't like that great, or I can sit there and consciously go, oh, they probably did this way or that way, is I can do it. But when it's something glaring that can't be overlooked, like, oh look, you can see the camera guy and the guy's glasses, like that is jarring. You can't excuse it. I can believe that Godzilla is actually a big monster destroying a city, even though he's a dude in a rubber suit, because it looks like a guy. Like, it looks like a monster. Like my imagination can fill in the poor effects, but when it's something that shouldn't be there, like strings holding up ships, or it just bothers me. And especially if I like have to see it, it's like, come on, I just don't want to. I don't want to see it. Don't remind me.
I'm trying to find an image of it where you could see the camera crew and the helmets. But they're pretty, like I said, they're pretty good about it. But once in a while, you're like, oh, I see you. like,
So Eric Breen says, Ashton Comics, fair point, but when Stan Lee was doing those early books, referring to X-Men, there was nothing like it in the industry. The writing itself may have been simplistic, but the creativity is incredible. I have to call you a little bit on that, Eric, because there was something like that in the industry. 3 months earlier, DC had released Doom Patrol, which was remarkably like the book that Stan Lee produced. Remarkably. So to say there was nothing else like it, eventually that becomes the case. Eventually there becomes nothing like X-Men. But I think in the early days, you look at early X-Men and Doom Patrol, and they're almost identical.
yeah.
And early X-Men, gets a lot of praise because, number one, X-Men's the most successful comic book series ever. And number two, Stan Lee, he started it. So, and Stan's the man. So,
and Jack.
Yeah, I unfairly didn't mention Jack. So we got Stan Lee and Jack Kirby doing the first issue of the most successful comic book series of all time. So it gets lauded kind of unfairly. If you just forget who did it, forget the title, and just read that book, it's not really good. It feels like, oh, we got to slap something together. Here we go. Now it goes on to become good, and Doom Patrol ultimately went nowhere. But at the time, I don't know. I feel that book gets way more credit because of what later people ended up doing with the book, and no one ever wants to say things like, well, Chris Claremont did better than Stan Lee, but he did. Now Chris Claremont isn't Stan Lee, and Stan Lee is still the man. I'm not trying to demean him or anything, but Stan Lee's not perfect either. And sometimes because Stan Lee is who he is, we don't ever want to say anything negative about the guy.
Well, I take it then you've never read Imagine if Stan Lee created the DC universe.
I haven't read it, but I do know about it, and that's...
Oh boy, I remember being a young Bats and being like, this is gonna be an amazing story. And I was like, oh no. It's like,
this is... You're the guy that's got him as your number one.
I know. No, yeah, I know. But I remember being a young Bats and being like, my dad is like, he wasn't into comics when I was into comics, but he liked them when he was a kid, right? And he like encouraged me to read them. Uh, and I was like, Dad, Stan Lee's writing Batman. He's like, oh, that's interesting. That's kind of weird, huh? Yeah. Is it good? Nope. It is not good. Like his Superman is like Superman comes up with his name by like standing at an intersection or something, and like he looks at the streets and it's like Clark Clark Avenue and like Peter Boulevard, and he picks like Clark, and then like a truck goes by and it's like Parker Kent Moving Company, and it's like, all right, my name is Clark Kent, and it's like you just like snuck in Peter Parker. Just,
Right.
all right, right on.
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing but respect for Stan Lee, but I feel like the guy was more of an idea man than a writer, and his contributions to comics are so vastly beyond just his writing, and I feel like all those contributions then get sort of like credited to his writing so that he gets remembered for being a better writer than he actually was. That's just and I don't think he was a bad writer. Like I said, that Silver Surfer story is one of my favorite comics ever. I think it was amazing. It blew me away. I was like, holy shit, I didn't know Stan Lee could write so well. Um, but it's kind of my same feelings for like J.R. Tolkien. I feel like because of his contributions to just literature in general and the fantasy genre, that it gets contributed to his skill as a writer, which I don't think was actually that good, which is why no one's ever read anything of his except for The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm very intrigued to have you. We're talking about Tolkien. Have you ever read any C.S. Lewis?
I started to, didn't grab me.
No.
I want to. I'm gonna make another effort someday. I want to read C.S. Lewis, but um, yeah,
I like to read the Narnia series, but I just also haven't committed to it.
yeah,
I like bought it at one point and was like, I started it and got like 50 pages into like, what was it called? Like the nephew, magician's nephew. And I was like, oh, this is not for, I don't know if this is for me.
yeah. It's probably not the best thing to start off, especially if you're not a fantasy fan. But we should start getting wrapped up. This our chat, even though we've had more viewers than usual, we haven't had that active of chat.
Mm-mm.
It might be because
We,
Melissa's gone, but
yeah. And we've been picking on Eric Breen all night.
you've been picking on Eric Breen.
No,
Eric,
no way.
I think you're amazing. Bats is the bad guy, not me. Just remember that. If you want to unsubscribe in vengeance, please take it only out on Bats.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just throwing you under the bus.
Yeah.
uh, no, everyone knows we love them. We're nobodies without you guys, really. I mean, we're just two jackholes who are on YouTube talking stuff. Um, Comic Book Black Belt says he just found the channel, likes the laid back style. Well, we are nothing but laid back, that is for sure. Uh,
he just discovered Ash on Comics' channel. That's awesome.
um, yes. By the way, even though I'm hosting this particular stream, Sergeant Bats, my partner in crime here, has also a channel. Um, you can find him easy, Sergeant Bats.
You
Thanks.
just click on my avatar in the.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. But he is.
I too comic book black belt. I remember it very clearly. I was walking through a Target looking at Star Wars toys, and Diversity in Comics just wrapped up a video, and I was like, oh, I need another comic book video to listen to. and Asher had a 36-minute video about his introduction, and I was like, "Oh, perfect! this one will take forever to listen to." Just throwing him under the bus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But no, like it was. I liked the longer video style because like I didn't have to pull my phone out of my pocket and be like find another one. But yeah, Zach had finished up, and I was his 5th subscriber, and now he has more subs than me, and we do a show. So
Yeah, have you been noticing that my videos have been shorter? Has anyone noticed my views have been shorter
I
for my
have, yeah.
videos? I've been consciously working on shorting my videos due to the overwhelming criticism I have received for telling me my videos are too long. I'm not 100% comfortable with it because I feel like I don't cover what I want to. But if the audience feels it's better, then I will listen to the audience. So
Yeah, you got to
hopefully,
listen to your customers.
so if you prefer what I'm doing now over later, then please send me feedback on the appropriate videos. If you feel like they're not, then tell me that too. I really am trying to find my way. Quirk says he only do like 8 to 10 minute videos. I don't know what he's saying there. I feel
He's crazy. Did you
Quirk's.
notice? Yeah, since we're talking about
It's our boy Jimmy.
Jimmy Olsen, he bangs his head under the desk. Uh, did you notice I put an intro little
I did.
what?
I like I think you need to work on it a little bit. It's a little raw, but I like where you're going with it. I
Yeah,
like
so I was like, I tried it and I was just like, this is kind of cool. I
I've been
mean,
trying to put my intro that I do when I do my digital videos on my PC. I was like, I can take these videos and I'll just put them on my phone and then I can edit them in. But the software that I use to do my videos on my phone will not recognize, no matter what video format I save them to. I tried everything: MPEG, MOVs, MP4s, AVIs, MKV file. Like every single video format I've tried, it's like does not recognize. I'm like, what?
you totally just said a bunch of stuff in Japanese.
Oh, sorry. Well,
Yeah.
every type of every
No,
type of
yeah, I understand. Yeah, I was just like, don't know what any of that means. You pretty much like said like
this is
pseudo.
you. I completely understand, except I don't know what any of that means.
No, you like, but it's like when you like watch like a TV show like Star Trek, and then like they're like explain like how they're gonna beat the bad guy with technology, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like that's what you just did. You like just threw pseudoscience at me.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, anyways, I tried every single format of video that I could, and just because this won't recognize, I'm like, what the fuck? It's pissing me off. I think I'm gonna have to abandon this video editor I use on my phone.
Yeah, I dig that Keen Master, Keen.
Yeah, I asked you about that earlier, and you wouldn't respond. So I downloaded it. I'm gonna maybe I'll edit my next video on it.
That's that's what Tristan and Robert both use to make their videos.
Hmm.
Like every video Nerdette's newsstand it's made on KindMaster.
I see. Interesting that you went to them for help and not me.
Well, you were like, here's some pseudoscience, and I'm like, I don't understand, but I totally agree. And then they were like, just download this app. And I'm like, do you know how to use it? They're like, you just gotta like use it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Like, like you don't know how to like you don't know how to make chicken until you like made chicken. It's like the same thing. It's like the best way I can describe it.
Oh boy. All right. So I hope everyone. I'm gonna keep posting this link to
Dang,
the
look at you,
Discord.
220 or 260 subs.
Yeah, I was at 266 at one point, but I think I did a video and then people were like, "F this dude."
What video could have that been?
I don't know. I don't know. It keeps going. Like every time I get up into the mid 60s, then it drops back into the 250s. So I keep pissing people
Well, at
off
least
somehow.
it's not like England teen where you got up to 10,000 and then the next day you were back at like, you know, 9,995. You're like, ah, what the hell happened?
That's a nice problem to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I, I don't know. I don't know. I keep changing things around. I don't have that many viewers anyway. It's fine. People are fickle on YouTube, and you say something controversial, and then they nope out. Um, so I posted the Discord link to Discord server that we started up a few weeks ago, and now we do after shows on there, so people can come join us and talk live. Um, so I invite everyone to come. We're gonna wrap the show up now. We're at the 3 hour mark, and someday I would really like to get this down to 2 hours, Bats, but we'll figure it out. We already got the technical difficulties. Knock on wood. This is the first time without the technical difficulties, so maybe we can streamline our video better. But we're gonna wrap this show up now. I posted the Discord link. Everyone's invited. If you have Discord, if you don't, it's free software. You don't even really need software. You can do it in your browser. But if you want to use voice, then you just download. You can also download on your phone or tablet, iOS, Android. Works like a charm. It allows you to type chat like we're doing right now, but a little bit better, and also be in an audio channel at the same time so you can hear us. And if you want to turn on your mic, you can also talk. And we just shoot the shit there until people decide they don't want to. So that's where it is. The server is called Comic Talk, and that's where we're going to get going. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to say before we turn off the show?
No, I think we covered it. I had a really good time today. Yeah, today was really fun.
Cool. All right.
It felt and you know, like I think part of it was I finally read a book that I absolutely hated, and we weren't just circle jerking each other. It's like,
yeah. All right. Comics Black Belt says he's got to go. So
right on, man. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks for coming by.
Well, we do this every Sunday, by the way. Comic book Black Belt.
Yep. And you can follow us on Twitter. You can see our handles there. I'm Ash1138. Bats is at SGTBats. And follow us on Twitter if you're on there. That's a good way to follow us. And Eric has hit his East Coast wall. But, dude, you've been a trooper, Eric, to hang out with us this long. You have a great evening as well.
Got a new Badger video coming soon, Eric.
I'm sure Quirks will join us over on the after show. Anyone else is welcome. If you're listening to this afterwards, come try to join us live on a future show. And yeah, and that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Same Ash channel. Wait, how do I say this again?
Same bats. Damn it! Now you got me all screwed up. Same bats time, same Ash channel. See you guys next week.
See you guys.